Live to the UK. News, information, entertainment, and the best music from the past 40 years. This is Play 2 UK. Tommy Boyd. Call 01243 55 60 60. Email studio@playradiouk.com. Skype play.radio.uk. Now, live from the south coast of England, the Tommy Boyd Show, only on Play 2 UK.
Good evening, it's 8 o'clock in the United Kingdom. Good evening to you, good day around the world, and if you're podcasting, Merry Christmas. Because some people are back right up with the podcast, which is very touching. Maybe it's 2009 or 2010, God only knows. Maybe I'm just a statistic, but this is what I used to sound like when I was alive. Okay. This evening, an interesting show. We were going to be digging into, as was raised by a number of people who contacted last night's show, between 8 and 12, the John Gaunt affair. More on that in just a second, but we're going to be looking this evening at a lot of the top stories that are around at the moment, because turns out from a little bit of market research that we've been doing... Market research? Well, yeah, it has been market research. That people quite cherish the opportunity to exploit the freedom of speech which exists in this kind of broadcasting compared to elsewhere, and would like the opportunity to comment on our leader, our government, governments around the world, issues around the world, the real cause of the economic problems that we're facing at the moment. And something that might have been a bit of a challenge for you listening today, in the United Kingdom, I don't know if it happens in Europe or in the United States, but on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we have 2-minute silence. And everybody in our building here, without really sitting down to discuss it at all, just simply fell silent. There was a pop-up email on everybody's screen that just said, please don't use the internal phones between 11 and 11:02. And that just happened at 5 to 11. That kind of reminded everybody. And so it was scrupulously observed. But I always wonder what everybody else is thinking about during the 2-minute silence, because I find it very hard to spend the whole 2 minutes, because your mind is active, isn't it, concentrating on the right things. So you find yourself thinking, is that a hair on my PC screen or what? And you're supposed to be thinking about 8 million dead, but that's the way the mind works. We will, of course, be welcoming your views via email, Skype, or you can call. And we're also welcoming Steve back. Hi, Steve, who was with us last week.
Evening.
Fellow.
Morning.
And morning. Merry Christmas. And Ali as well. Hiya.
Hello.
Okay, a friendly voice from Sunday nights, as was
last year,
on Play Radio. Yeah, so welcome back. Good to see you. Steve, as far as the sort of what they call the top stories,
Yep.
What's highest in your mind at the moment?
Ultimately, it has to be the economy, doesn't it? Because that's the thing that's going to roll and roll. The other stuff is going to come in, it's going to get churned out, and it's going to leave. But the economy is here for a very long time, and it affects everybody. And there are people that say, oh, it doesn't affect me, I'm a policeman. Yes, it does, because your local constabulary's got 10 million quid in Icelandic bank account, old son. Where do you think your money comes from? It doesn't just get dreamt out of thin air. Or does it? Maybe it does, because the government are borrowing squillions. I think that's about right. They're then talking about giving us tax breaks, so they're going to have less income. The idea behind that is that we spend more money. So where's it coming from?
Where's it coming
Where's
from?
it coming
They've
from?
got to borrow it.
Who's lending?
He's lending. Who does lend the government billions and billions of pounds?
It used to be us. You could buy government bonds, all that kind of thing.
The public, you say us.
The public. Yeah, but who's going to invest in the who's going to invest in the government right now?
Who is lending money at the moment
I don't know.
to the British government to fund these tax cuts? And VAT cuts are also being mooted.
But it's not just us, is it?
It's not American finance, is it? Because they haven't got any money.
No, they're broke.
Isn't this the kind of thing that we should know? I haven't turned on the television news for 3 or 4 months now without it being the first or second story. And I understand that a verbal request has gone out across the BBC to stop using the R word, because journalists, in order to pep up whatever their story was, found that if they used the R word, second or third paragraph, so it might be a story about Chelsea Football Club, and the fact that Didier Drogba is probably going to be fit for their next Saturday's game. But in the second paragraph, the journo, just to pep the story up, would say even a club as rich as Chelsea in this recession-hit time. So they've been asked to cut down on the number of uses of the R word. And apparently, somebody's been tracking this, I don't know who, maybe they made the stats up, but what they reported is the use of the R word has dropped from over 1,800 the week before last.
No.
So about 170
Oh, how
last
sad.
year.
Good.
But who counts them?
Exactly. That's sad that somebody's counting it. But you see, that's not the journalist's fault, because your modern day journalist, and he goes to journalist school, they are taught to use emotive words. They are, because the more mainstream, well-established journalist knows better than that. And in fact, a good story, well delivered, well researched is enough. But really, we don't do anything properly these days. So don't worry about doing great research or anything, but use some emotive words.
You're right.
I heard a story the other day about building societies repossessing homes. And I said to the chap, well, actually, they're not. They're repossessing properties. There's a big difference. There's a massive difference, because most of the repossessions are people that have remortgaged other properties to do buy-to-let and all the rest of it. That's not their home. It's a property. It's an investment. But home's far more emotive, because home is where the fire is, where your slippers are, where the kids are protected. When it rains, you're dry. When it's cold, you're warm. When you're hungry, it's where you feed. And I believe that that's how journalists are taught. So that's why they're using the recession word. I mean, they started using it before we had one.
But there's a huge danger of the overuse of that word, and I'm hoping that's why the BBC's pulled back on it, because I think we heard so much of it in every single headline, on every single channel, by every journalist, that actually people start to switch
Did you
off.
find yourself getting a little bit frightened?
At first.
Bit nervy?
And then, you go out to the streets and the shops are still packed.
Yeah.
And I don't see anyone, apart from myself, changing their lifestyle.
Yeah, but have you turned the central heating on yet?
Yeah, I have, but I delayed it.
There you are. There you are.
I delayed it big time.
I know, everybody I've mentioned that to has gone,
Yeah.
no, we're wearing sweaters in the evening.
Yeah.
Turn it down a degree as well.
Which is probably a good thing. But coming back to my point, my beef about the way we are told about what's going on in the world around us is, are manifold. But one is that the R word was being used long before anybody even began, and I suspect long before any of the young journalists, too young to remember the last recession, bothered to find out what a recession is. Because actually, it's quantifiable.
Yes.
There's no kind of, ooh, this feels like a recession. There's no such thing. 2 quarters of negative growth is a recession. And I think a lot of the young journalists who started using the R word weren't aware that there is this exact formula. We are now in recession. We are not yet in recession. We are now out of recession. But the other thing I want to know is, once they found that out, that that's the case,
Yeah.
and I still don't know the answer to this one, who decided that? Who's the bloke? I thought it was a bloke. Who said?
Might not have been, yeah.
When we have had 2 quarters of negative growth, an economy shall be deemed to be in recession.
Who was that? Was it, you know Milton Keynes? I'm digressing a little bit here. You know Milton Keynes? This country's economic policy has either been Keynesian or, I believe the other guiding light of economic policy was, Milton. Is that why Milton Keynes is called Milton Keynes?
I've no idea.
And can we move on? Because
Yeah,
even I'm
let's.
bored with that conjecture.
Yeah.
I know, but it's always run through my mind. It's when they don't give you the information that you need to begin to understand how important the story they're about to tell you is, they just, as you were saying earlier, Steve, quite rightly, they just infiltrate a buzzword and that's enough. They got your attention.
But I think, going on with this, ask me what's in the forefront of my mind. I think the whole problem with the media is they completely have missed the point with the whole, I'm going to use the word, are you counting, recession? Okay, because I don't really care, and neither do you, and neither does Ali, whether or not HSBC has had £34 billion pumped into it by Lloyds TSB, who've bought out HSBC, who've bought out the BBC, who've bought, I don't really care, because you know what? It doesn't affect my life. Not really. It might away down the line in years to come when maybe the lending deals aren't quite as good. But actually, I don't think that will really happen. I don't think there's a great deal of competition between them all anyway. They all look at each other and remain quite close. What does affect me is my mortgage payment. What does affect me is my gas bill. And it really does. And the press kind of go, oh yes, all the poor people won't be able to pay it. But actually, no, a lot of us won't be able to pay it. And maybe really genuinely won't be able to meet that. Good, hard-working, proper people Not politicians, not football stars, not X Factor hopefuls, just good old Joe and Mrs. Joe. Good old Joe goes to work, Mrs. Joe gets the kids to school, then Mrs. Joe's got a part-time. They are being affected by this, and how does it affect them? So we should stop scaring everybody with all these terrible stories, and America's got $10 trillion worth of oil it can't sell. No, how does that affect me? What does that mean to me? Because actually, when you look out the window, you don't see pop stars and rock stars, you see Mr. and Mrs. Joe. And I want to know, as I am Mr. and Mrs. Joe, I want to know how it affects me, how it affects them. That's what's important. And that's the bit I don't think the media really gets hold of. Occasionally they might send a reporter out to a forge in Hereford and say, George has been here, it's a family business for 4. And poor old George comes out, doesn't he, and he's all dressed up, I've had to lay 2 folk off or put them on, and that kind of, but that's what this really means. This recession is really about the common people, the ordinary folk, not about the bankers and whether they were or weren't ripping us off and all the rest of it and who's lent who and who's bought out who. Frankly, don't give a monkeys. But I do give a monkeys. I can keep the home for my children. I can keep that roof over my head. And I know that I can pay for the things that, first of all, I need, and secondly, that maybe I want. That's what it's all about. And media doesn't look at that, not properly.
I nearly said you're tuned to. You're downloading, well, whatever the phrase is. It's 11 minutes past, 12 minutes past 8 UK time. It's Play 2. It's our talk show Tuesday evening, 8 until midnight. We've got Steve and Ali with us from 8 until 10, and we've decided to go head on into all the big stories that are happening around the world at the moment. One of the big stories at home in the UK concerns fellow broadcaster John Gaunt with another radio station, and more on that in just a little while. But first of all, I'm really looking forward to introducing Steve in Atlanta, to Steve in the UK, and Ali. Hello, Big Steve.
So, okay. So you don't have a guy there named Stephen Alley. It's 2 different people.
Now, am I really slurring that badly? And I'm only on
Skype maybe you don't hear things as closely. I just who is Steve? Wasn't he there the last time?
He's paying attention. I was. Yes. Hi, Steve.
And Ali wasn't.
And Ali wasn't.
And Ali wasn't.
And Ali,
but I think I remember you from last year when I came here in August. I'm sure you were on then.
Yeah.
There he is. I can see him on the Skype. I love Skype. Skype's great.
That's some microphone you've got there.
Describe it.
Well,
it's like
that's
a little
what all
ball.
the ladies say.
It's an air freshener. It's an air freshener. It's not a microphone.
Let me paint the picture. Steve is sitting in, I think, his downstairs cellar where he also does some recording. He's got a tan waistcoat on. He's looking cool as always, but he's got one of those big overblown microphones which Letterman, I think probably Johnny Carson's the first I saw with this real sort of motif for, hey, I'm in charge of the show, I've got the big microphone. So I guess what you're telling us, Steve.
Well, it definitely makes me feel more confident speaking than just going into the other mic for some reason. It just it has a Walter Winchell sort of effect. Do you know who he is?
No. So who is he?
He was a famous radio broadcaster and television broadcaster in the 40s and 50s. Very, very anti-communist, complete prick. A precursor to go into the John Gaunt story. He was a precursor to that kind of guy.
Oh, you've caught up on the John Gaunt story in America?
Well, I've caught up on it by reading The Guardian.
Okay. Any thoughts?
Well, it's funny because, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, my friend from England was visiting, and the Ken Livingstone story had just broke that was of a similar kind of thing, where he called someone a Nazi.
Yeah, that was as he was leaving, and I think he was the worse for wear. Do you remember this, Steve?
Yeah.
He was the worse for wear. He was leaving some kind of an event. A journalist that he didn't, that he had got a slight sort of history with, made a remark.
We should point out to folk living abroad, he was the mayor of London at the time.
Good work.
So he had, quite a big gig. He wasn't a radio host. He was the mayor of London representing our.
But he'd had a few, and it was kind of a one-on-one, and they had a bit of a history of animosity, as I understand it.
Yeah, but the reporter was a Jew, and therefore was deeply offended.
In fact, that was, I think the implication was that that's why Ken Livingstone chose that particular insult.
But I don't even buy that, because that doesn't even make sense. Having grown up Jewish, as I have, in amongst ourselves, Nazi is always used to mean someone who is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And certainly Livingston wasn't saying, "Hey, great, you're a Nazi."
No.
I love Nazis.
He was doing it to wind him up.
And he was basically saying the guy was a complete prick.
But is it possible for you, with your sort of like heritage, enormous heritage of reasons for finding the word Nazi so appalling and upsetting, is it possible for you to concede that there is a circumstance, and I'm not saying myself there is or isn't, but I'm asking you whether you think it is possible for the term Nazi with a small n, if you know what I mean by that, to have some kind of a parlance that doesn't have you running for a lawsuit?
Oh, yeah. I've referred to someone as a bit of a Nazi. And that's obviously about their personality. It doesn't mean they dabble into National Socialism. It means they're a bit severe about things.
Okay.
It has a specific meaning. What I see, though, as hypocrisy is that the same people who were screaming for Livingston's head are defending Gaunt.
Let me just work that one through here, Steve.
Yeah.
The same people that were screaming for Livingstone's head.
Well, i.e. the press and the media.
And the Jewish community, Steve, in Atlanta?
No, I didn't notice that the Jewish community was getting really upset about it. It was more like the Daily Mail brigade.
So what you're saying is that when you like somebody, you'll forgive them almost anything. If you don't like somebody, just about anything is going to be, as far as you're concerned, a nail that can go into their coffin. That could be a good point.
And I think that's
Ali
what's
agrees.
happened with Ross and Brand and everyone trying to jump on the Clarkson thing recently as well. Because there's a lot of people who find Ross and Brand difficult, and I think that's why the complaints went from 2 to 40, because I know someone who complained because he doesn't like them.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a bandwagon thing.
Yeah. Do you think we'd still burn witches if it was lawful? in
Where I come from, they do.
They do.
We don't like to talk about it, but it happens.
I lived in a village like that.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. It's only 200 or 300 years ago. We used to actually... Well, actually, we didn't burn witches. We only burned one woman, and that was Joan of Arc. We used to hang them.
There's been
cheaper.
A group of people been trying to get all the witches pardoned recently.
Yeah.
To sort of because that's going to make them feel much better, isn't it? Sorry we drowned and burnt you, but anyway.
And go back to the Nazi term. If you were in a private setting, dinner party, friends, actually, I think that, it's not actually a term I would use. It's not really in my vocabulary, but I wouldn't be massively offended if someone said, "Oh, that's a bit Nazi, isn't it?" or something like that, because, like you said, it's kind of got the lower. It's not a capital, lowercase.
No, disagree.
Private setting. There are a lot of things that we say, and in work circumstances too. I've been in places where, people have said something, and I've been horrified, but knowing full well that it would never go outside that wider circle. It's like, because it's.
Yeah, but with respect, John Gaunt was on national radio, so it's slightly different, isn't it?
Yeah, but those people complaining would probably have no problem if it was between friends.
I'm not interested in the people complaining. I just think it's a deeply offensive remark, and it would never come into my vocabulary, ever, and I don't think it should come into anyone's. And I think, frankly, anyone who uses it shows a shallow use of the English language and struggling for something better to say. So they've copped for the easy, below-the-belt route.
Yeah, that's true, but I think it would be much more offensive if the guy had been German, if it had been a racial slur. But it's painting Nazis as the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Films I watched, they were. most Sunday afternoons in this country.
Although I have one interesting thing to add here, which is just a talking point. I've been reading Hitler's Table Talk, which is a fascinating record of everything that he chatted about whilst he was eating his usually vegetarian meal, drinking mineral water because he was a teetotal, and also banging on about how much he hated cigarette smoke. I don't think that connection plays any part in the John Gaunt episode. And I want to put my cards on the table here. Two things, everybody. Okay, first off, we have decided after much consideration that since a respected broadcaster and journalist's position with his current employer is in jeopardy, it would be inappropriate of us to play any part in the inquiry that's taking place into what went on when he talked to that Tory councillor that might in any way influence the outcome of that inquiry one way or another. So whilst I don't mind entertaining any thoughts, observations or views other people have on the John Gaunt episode, I will be moderating them so that they do not become significantly substantial and might infiltrate various forums. The substance and content of some of them at the moment that I have been on before we came on air, somewhat upsetting, I have to say. I don't want anything that's said on this programme, which is a responsible programme that uses its freedoms responsibly, to influence that outcome in any way. Because I have a lot of sympathy with John Gaunt and the difficult job that I think he does brilliantly well. Steve, I'm grateful for your call. Look forward to talking to you again in the not-too-distant future. Meantime...
Oh, and check out the Lyndon Johnson diaries if you liked the Hitler ones.
Oh, okay.
They're great.
Yeah,
and in fact, they played from one of them on Have I Got News for You on Friday.
Was that the Johnson thing about his trousers?
Yes. There's millions of episodes.
I don't believe
like
that was Johnson. I do not
No,
believe...
it really was.
No.
There's tons of stuff like that.
What the...
He used to show off his scar.
Have you heard, Steve, have you
No,
heard...
fill me in.
Steve in Atlanta, tell Steve and Ali the gist of what Lyndon Johnson was recorded saying to his tailor about his trousers.
He was just complaining that they were cutting into his balls. And I think he said, into my nuts, I think is what he kept saying.
Yes. He said, I need a little bit more slack from balls to butthole.
Yeah.
But who recorded that? Tailors don't record incoming calls for training purposes. Not in the 1960s in Dallas, anyway.
No, Johnson put in the recording devices that Nixon ended up getting screwed with.
No.
Johnson's recording himself.
He's testing it.
Yeah,
out.
for posterity.
Telling his tailor to put more cloth in the crotch area of his trousers.
I think you need to ask the
Yes.
question, where was he hiding the recording equipment?
Well, there's that.
Maybe it was downstairs, that's why he needed a bit more slack. I don't know.
Cheers, Atlanta, Steve. Always great talking to you, friend. Thank you. Okay, this is Play. It's our talk show for a Tuesday evening. Part of our schedule this evening had been to consider the John Gaunt thing, which was actually brought to our attention. I don't know how it come, but I wasn't aware that anything had happened to John Gaunt, with John Gaunt, until we came on air last night and started picking up emails and comments about the John Gaunt thing. And we were planning to major on it this evening, but after second thoughts, you know, it's a sensitive thing. We've got a guy's career and work here, and, you know, everybody's got to work and live. There is an inquiry going on, and it's something that we may return to. We certainly will return to at a later date, but I just feel it's a sort of intelligent, self-imposed, what do they call it, sub judice, where you don't discuss something that's being inquired into in a court.
Until there's a decision,
and
there's
then
probably not a lot to say, is there?
Yeah.
He's either going to lose his job or talk about that, or he's going to keep his job or talk about that. But at the moment, he said it, it's done, move on.
Beautiful. Okay, it's 8:25.
Play 2 UK. Headlines.
A man's been charged with the murder of a teenage model. Amy Lee Barnes, who was 19, died after being found with stab wounds at her home in Falmouth in Bolton on Saturday. 21-year-old Ricardo Morrison from Birmingham will appear in court tomorrow. 3 people are facing long jail sentences for causing the death of an abused baby. The 17-month-old boy from North London suffered 50 injuries in the last 8 months of his life. There is a political battle over tax. The Tories are promising breaks for companies who employ people who've been on the dole for 3 months or more. A woman's given the world's first ovary transplant. A woman given the world's first ovary transplant has had a baby girl. The 38-year-old from Germany conceived shortly after surgery. She gave birth by caesarean section. She received a whole ovary from her identical twin last year. The nation paused today to mark the 90th anniversary of the end of the First World War. 3 of the last surviving veterans laid wreaths at the Cenotaph in London. And it's the end of an era for the QE2. A huge firework display tonight will mark its last visit to Southampton.
Play 2 UK. Weather.
Further showers this evening across Scotland and western parts of Britain. Ease overnight with most parts becoming dry by dawn. Chilly inland with a local ground frost. Tomorrow, apart from a few showers across parts of Scotland, most areas will have a dry day with long spells of sunshine. Feeling pleasant as winds become light.
You're up to date on Play 2 UK. Play Radio UK have teamed up with Virgin Wines to offer you the chance to get £20 off a fine selection of wines and champagnes. For more details, click on the banner or go to playradiouk.com/Virgin Wines.
Ellington Lodge at the Concord Club. Take advantage of our excellent jazz dinner, bed and breakfast rates. Enjoy live traditional jazz on a Sunday evening whilst dining in our superb restaurant. Stay the night at Ellington Lodge and enjoy a full English breakfast, all for just £52.50 per person. Look out for forthcoming events on Play Jazz UK or visit our website, theconcordclub.com.
Websites don't always work to their full potential. In fact, they can seem like a mystic art. Wouldn't it be great if you had someone on hand to wave a magic wand that would optimize, improve and increase traffic to your website? Fear no more. The Web Wizard is here dispensing web wisdom and free tips. Email your question to Jason Rutland, the Play 2 Web Wizard. wizard@playradiouk.com. Then listen at 2:30 p.m. on the last Thursday of every month. The Web Wizard on Play 2 with Argo Internet Business Consultants. Growing your ideas. Click argo.uk.com.
The Tommy Boyd Show, only on Play 2 UK.
This evening between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock with Steve and Ali, we're talking about the big things in the world today. John DeHora has emailed Steve your thing about where is the money coming from.
Yeah.
The money that the government is going to borrow to provide us with the tax cuts that will keep the economy ticking over. Mm-hmm. He says, where's the money coming from that our government is borrowing? Is it fiat currency, fiat money? Okay. He says, the terms fiat currency and fiat money relate to types of currency or money whose usefulness results not from any intrinsic value or guarantee that it can be converted into gold or any other currency, but instead from a government's order, a fiat, that it must be accepted as a means of payment.
That's exactly what I thought. I'm glad he agrees with me. What? What?
Hands up. About a car.
Hands up. Who understands?
G-Man's on Skype. Hi, G-Man.
Good evening, Tommy. Good evening, Alison and
Steve.
Call me Ali.
Sorry. Ali. Hi, Ali.
Hello.
I'm just ringing up in response to your conversation just a couple of minutes ago with Fat Steve, and I'll try not to mention the Gaunt incident because I know you're not touching it now. But do you think it was interesting, and going back to maybe the bit of the Ross and Brand stuff, I don't know if you remember a couple of months ago that Ashley Cole was roundly booed off of an England football field for making a mistake that led to another team scoring. And I remember ringing up another radio station that night and complaining about his performance and being told I was an idiot for booing him because he was just doing his job and he was just a football player.
Did you boo him then? Were you there?
I wasn't there, but I booed from my front room.
Oh, you booed the television?
Best place for it.
Yeah, you can boo in your front room, can't you?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't paid whatever ridiculous amount of money it was to go and see my football team. I stayed at home like most normal people, unfortunately. And I booed him from my front room, and I got annoyed because another radio presenter said that anyone that booed him was an idiot. Mm-hmm. So I rang up to complain that was offensive.
Who was that, anyway?
That was Alan Green on Radio 5 on the 606 phone thing.
Okay.
Would you have booed him? Sorry.
Got annoyed with him. Sorry.
Would you have booed him if you'd been there then? Either way.
Yeah.
Or was it like, you know, like that private-public thing going on? That I think we actually behave and say things privately with our friends that we probably wouldn't do.
Not when it comes to sport.
Oh.
Yeah, you behave just the same there as you do at home. Yeah.
Okay,
think
well,
Steve's
it's maybe a
absolutely
blokey
right.
thing,
I think
I don't
there
know.
are some things where I would agree with you, Ali, that perhaps something I'd say behind the bravado of an internet connection or a bedroom, but would never say in public. But for sport, is completely different. I would have
Different
booed
thing
him the hell out
altogether,
of that stadium. He earns far too much money. He made a mistake. He should hear about it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We don't like Ashley Cole.
No.
People don't like Ashley Cole. Unfortunately for Ashley, the fact of the matter is he comes across as being somebody you probably really wouldn't want as a mate. He'd be a bit annoying. He's got a fabulous girlfriend, but that doesn't seem to work out terribly well. There have been all sorts of rumours
He doesn't seem to pay
about
much
his
attention to
social
it, obviously.
life, which is neither here nor there as far as I'm or most people concerned. But there's just something annoying about the way he left Arsenal. The fact that he went in pursuit of the big bucks, that he didn't think £55,000 was enough because Thierry Henry was on £125,000. I mean, that's really going to piss people off, isn't it? Who are, you know, struggling by on 28, 33, 42, whatever. Everybody who's around about the tax threshold is going to be struggling these days and isn't going to be keen to find out that a man thinks that being paid that per week, more than they earn per year, is piddling. So that was the reason you booed him, because if John Terry had cocked up that back pass or whatever he did, he
I would
wouldn't
have booed
got
John Terry.
Nobody
I
boos
don't
John
think I would have
Terry.
booed him as viciously, but I would have booed John Terry.
Right, so why don't men boo John Terry then? Because he's the kind of geezer we'd like to be.
No, I'm not a big fan of John Terry's either.
But you
I
wouldn't
think
boo
he's
him.
another
You wouldn't
one
boo him.
that-
You'd never boo John Terry.
No,
Men
I
don't
think
boo-
I would.
No,
I think
you
if he'd
wouldn't.
made that
No,
sort of
you
mistake that
wouldn't.
led to
No
a goal
bollocks.
that could have
No, I don't
potentially
agree
cost
with
us the
you.
match.
You don't know yourself well enough, son.
Well,
never booed
perhaps
John
I wouldn't
Terry.
have done- perhaps I wouldn't have booed John Terry at the game.
In
There's-
your
there's-
gut,
there's
he's the
maybe-
man you want to be. He's hard, he's good, South London, he's solid stock, he
I'm
looks
South, and
after
I'm not
himself,
worried
he
about
doesn't
John
make
Terry.
too many mistakes, he doesn't appear greedy even though he's earning 3 times what Ashley Cole is earning. He's got
Perhaps he
great
just doesn't
PR
talk
somehow.
much about it.
He gets in the odd punch-up, but it's an honourable punch-up. Wasn't he the bloke who, when a bunch of people were abusing him at some away game, he went and got a pint and stood amongst them and said, "Now, what's all this about, fellas?" That's John
I believe
Terry.
so, yeah.
He knows how to play the PR game.
I'm just going to say, he's got better PR people. That's all it is, really. And you know what? When you get to meet these people, and I don't really follow football, so I don't really give a monkeys, but it doesn't matter what sports it is. When you get to meet these people, we all form opinions. Now, it's like the Scottish guy, Andy What's-His-Face, in the tennis. What's his name?
Yeah.
Murray.
Andy Murray. Nobody likes him. We've all decided we don't like him. Okay? Why? I don't know why. Tim
It's because he
Henman
comes
doesn't-
across when his interviews are very gruff and
Yeah, do you know
and very
why?
kind.
Just shy.
He's
He's
No.
not media savvy.
He's just played 4 hours tennis. Okay,
Yeah.
he's knackered, and he's got some dickhead with a microphone starting to say, so how do you think you did? Well, I won. What else do you want to know? Can I go now? That's why. He's actually a super bloke. Now,
I challenge you, and this is a good challenge.
Go
Watch
on.
anybody who is interviewed after a tennis game, and you will spot the same 5 phrases.
Go on.
None of them say anything. I don't know them, but I'm saying they're all very similar. It's the
Oh, I
same.
see,
If you watch
yeah.
Match of the Day, you just clip the interviews. They're all trained. None of them ever say what they think.
Well,
They
that's-
all say
that's-
what
yeah,
they've been
yeah.
told to think.
Yeah, like politicians. But it's how they say that nothing, isn't it? But it's not just that with him. Well, you look at him, and he looks a little bit like Pete Sampras. He looked like an American spoilt brat. I'm sure he was a lovely fella, and he was a great tennis player. But really, the public never got behind him. Yet
know,
we loved Bjorn Borg.
I just
What?
a moment's
They
insight
went
here,
from
because
Agassi
you're
at the
talking
longer head,
tennis.
didn't it?
You're talking tennis and you're talking press conferences. And for 10 years, I helped them run the Stella press conference tent at the Stella Artois tournament, which is the tennis,
Oh, I
the
was
grass.
involved in PR in that.
Right.
Gosh.
Do you two want to go outside and take
How
the
funny.
concession?
No, what, isn't it a small world? Carry on.
It's a small world. You wouldn't want to have to rewire it, would you? Where was I?
Go
sort
on,
of
you
plumbing
used
out.
to...
Right, Pete. Yeah, and what used to happen was the players would play their game, and then you'd say to them, "Could you come straight into the tent, do your interview, and then you can go and shower, and you're free." So most of them went fine. But Sampras, this one particular occasion, and he was a miserable bugger. Sampras arrived so quickly in the press tent that none of the press were there. So it's just me and Sampras. So Sampras came marching in, all sweaty, with 8 rackets like they have, and he just went, "Well, here's everybody." And I said, "Well, they're coming, Pete." So he came and sat next to me up on the podium thing with the microphones, and then it's my job to say, when the press had all arrived, questions. That's it.
Right.
And me and Pete sit there for about 30 seconds with him looking at me like I'm just a piece of you-know-what.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Would you like a glass of mineral water?" "No." And he said, where are they?" I said, "Look."
Did he win or did he lose?
He won.
Yeah, he won everything, didn't he?
Normally
I-
he did, didn't he?
And
I just
Yes,
you're quite right.
Yes,
Yeah.
Pete Sampras is a bit obnoxious, but some of them are absolutely charming. And you know Andrew, I say Castle, but everyone says Castle, who now does TVAM, Good Morning TV.
Oh, yeah.
He was, when he won through to, I think, the quarterfinals at Stella, and that same summer he got to the quarters of Wimbledon, he was genuinely the nicest, most engaging, genuine, hard-working interviewee that I've ever seen out of any of the players. And this is everybody from McEnroe and Connors and, who was the Czech guy? Lendl was a right pain in the butt, he was.
Yeah.
Boris was all right, but nowhere near as charming and as thoughtful and helpful as the Brits.
I think the thing is that they're all doing what we'd all think we'd like to do. And that's why we're kind of so anti them when they're quite grumpy, is we're thinking, why aren't you more cheerful? You're playing tennis, you're earning money by playing sport, you're going to these fantastic venues and seeing the world. We would like to do that. You're miserable so-and-so, cheer up and smile.
Yeah, but your point originally, which we'll just come back to, is that we took an instant dislike to Andy Murray. And we did. You're quite right.
We did, yeah.
I said that, yeah.
A lot of
Yeah,
people
we did.
did.
Instant, just like that.
Snap
How good
decision.
are Steve, and then Ali, and then G-Man. How good are you at making that instant judgment, which you don't choose to do, but you find yourself doing? Oh, I like him. Oh, I don't like her. Other way around, whatever. And then you end up spending more and more time with people. Do you ever find yourself being enormously surprised about your initial reaction?
No, invariably not. But there are two sorts of person. There's the sort of person that you meet, and it's much, much easier when you meet them because you've got that face-to-face communication. You can feel their body heat coming right at you. That one you don't get wrong, or I don't. Very, very rarely do I get it wrong. Sometimes you go in with expectations, but I always go in with an open mind, and I'm quite happy to say I was really wrong about her, I was really wrong about him. But we're talking about people here at a distance, people who are just on the thing in the corner of the sitting room. We call it the television. They then appear on the back pages of your newspapers if you take them. Far more difficult to form a judgment about them, and we all do it, whether you like it or not. Now, the point in case on this one was Lewis Hamilton. A lot of people not too sure about him, and I must admit I wasn't too sure. I thought, yeah, he's a skillful driver, but what's he like as a bloke? He's coming across a little bit, gets out of the car, he hasn't even broken a sweat. Come on, mate, 2 hours in the car, everyone else is like gasping for water, you're like as fresh as a daisy. I'm not sure. Then I met him, then I interviewed him, then I realised, because I was sitting as close to him as I'm sitting to you, what a top fella. What an absolutely first-class top fella. So, the people at a distance, I'm not sure that we can. And let's face it, we're never really going to find out. Andy Murray, he might be my new best friend. I don't know. Never likely to find out. But I think with people I meet in life, I reckon, generally, I get it right.
I think that's quite a good point about the media. When you're watching them on some form of media, that everything is slightly skewed. And you don't really get...
What skews it?
It's perhaps the fact that they have to maybe act in a certain way. They may feel they have to act in a certain way. They may not be allowed to put their guard down, perhaps. You know, there are all kinds of restrictions with television. I think as I've got older that I've learnt not to be so judgmental. I think when you're younger, you're very judgmental. You know, I've got teenagers. I know how judgmental they are. You try and teach them not to be, but they are. They make very instant decisions. I'm not saying I don't, but actually the older I've got, the more I realise that it's too easy to actually jump in and think somebody's like a certain way.
It's
until
pleasant.
you get to know them.
It's
and then
pleasant.
it's so wonderful when you actually, it's quite a epiphany really, isn't it? When you actually, there's been someone that you don't like, you know, just immediately, just don't particularly like being around them, but then perhaps you find a circumstance where you have to be with them and you get a little whiff of what their life is really like, and then it's quite nice to actually think, oh, you know, they're really quite a nice person underneath, or they're like this because of that.
I quite agree.
Sorry, go on.
Two of my closest friends now, the first time I met with, or first time I conversed with them in any sort of way, I argued with them. Over quite trivial things, but had gone away with the impression that that person's an idiot. You know, I never want to speak to that person again. And now I get on very well with them. I think you're right about the age thing. I think the older you get, possibly a little more tolerant you get, depending on whether you're a sort of a grumpy person or not. I think as older you get a little bit more tolerant of other people's views and opinions, and therefore you start thinking, all right, okay, they don't agree with me or they don't side with me on why not? Allowed to. There was a very interesting program on Channel 4 probably about 8 years ago, where 4 people were put in a room, and they were told that they had £1 million to give away. And the only way they were going to give £1 million away was by a series of interviews with people via television. They never met them. And the first round, and they had to kind of get 5 people, and they had to cut them down round by round. And the first way in which they got rid of someone was just literally by being shown a picture. So your prejudices came out immediately.
Yeah.
So they had the 4 people had to agree on which person they got rid of, just based on a picture. The next round was them just reading out a sentence about themselves, like who am I? And they had to get rid of somebody.
Well,
and it was fascinating television.
It's quite interesting, actually. I think I saw some of that, but also I've found in my life that a lot of people, there's been 2 people read me in 2 different ways. And this was like based on mothers up at the school, at the primary school, when I used to take the kids there. People who didn't know me. Some people used to think that I was very grumpy. It was just purely, obviously, from the way I look. And I'm not actually a grumpy person, quite a happy person generally. And other people used to think that I was quite officious and scary. And I mean, anyone who knows me, would know that I'm actually a little pussycat inside. And so perception can be so very wrong.
Or indeed our own
or just looking
self-judgment,
like
Yeah, how do you know people?
No,
say
I'm
that?
not
Scary.
scary.
Argument.
How do you know people?
Everybody thinks they're a
Because
pussycat.
people told me.
Yeah.
So and so thinks that you're really kind of quite a scary person, but how can they?
You do tend to make quite a scary impact at first meeting.
No,
Yes, you do. I'm sorry, you do, and I'm not. I'm just being open and honest here. You do. The first time I met you, Alison, I had to come across when it was time for tea. To say to you, look, I'm sorry to have jumped down your throat there, but you were coming on a bit strong.
Oh, but I was making a very valid point at a meeting.
You were coming
yes,
out
I
with
was.
absolute rubbish.
No,
it was
I
inappropriate.
was not.
You were being aggressive, and you were having a go at somebody who was very vulnerable. I had to cut you off at the kneecap, so I did.
Don't
so
mean to say I can't make a valid point just because he's vulnerable.
I'm just starting an argument. G-Man, sorry, the floor is yours.
I was going to say, but isn't it great that you're friends now and that you've got past that?
Who said they're friends? Sorry.
I love him to bits.
Does it say that on the website somewhere? I'll get it altered.
But listen, just quickly, whilst I've still got you, G-Man, everybody, who is have a little think about this one. Who is the person, and it could be somebody you know or somebody in the public eye, about whom you have done the sort of biggest U-turn in your judgment of whether you either used to like them and now you loathe them, or the other way round. And I'll start the ball rolling. Michael Portillo. 10, 15 years ago, I really loathed the bloke. I really would have signed up to anything that would have made his life difficult. I can't think of anybody, apart from 1 or 2 other politicians, who I loathed the more. To me, he seemed oleaginous, he seemed like oily.
Oh, okay.
Oily in a kind of smug way, with all that smug smile on his face the whole time. A man who turned his back on his father, who fought and then had to flee a regime in Spain, and then Michael Portillo comes to this country and actually signs up with a similar kind of regime in order just to sort of rub his father's nose. Now, what a terrible son, what a terrible politician, what an appalling man. And I've done a completely 360-degree U-turn on Michael Portillo. I think he's fantastic. So that's me. Anybody else?
G-Man?
Really? You hate me that much?
No. I was asking.
Sorry.
I formed an opinion very quickly.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. Who's yours?
I think it would be Ken Livingstone.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Now,
2 votes for Ken. Go on.
Which way, though?
Go on. Go on, G-Man.
This is difficult because I think I've gone almost probably the other way around from where I was a couple of years ago.
Oh, well, you just
years ago, when he was in local politics, in London politics with the GLC.
Wait, sorry, stay there, because we're going to speculate about whether you used to loathe him and now you love him, or whether you used to love him and now you loathe him. And I get the same thing from Steve. But I've just got a number of very important commercial messages And since this isn't the radio, I can say, listen very carefully to the one for La Scala. I totally agree with everything they're trying to sell you there. And as for the COI one on sparklers, this is a very important message about sparklers, if anybody's got any left.
Enjoy yourselves this bonfire night. But remember, even a little sparkler burns at around 2,000 degrees centigrade. Don't mess with fireworks.
My mum logged on to Play Radio UK and treated herself to some amazing Swarovski jewellery from the Scala Jewellery. She looks $1 million. You should see all the other mums and dads' faces when she picks me up from school. She's the classiest mum ever. She said the Scala Jewellery is handmade in Italy with Swarovski stones. Mum said if I'm good, she'll buy me some of the Scala Jewellery when I'm a bit older. Have a look for yourself. Go to playradiouk.com and click on the Scala Jewellery today.
Hi, how you doing? This is Marcus the Monster Rocker from Play Rock UK, one of the awesome stations on the Play Radio network. I just wanted to let you know that if you're a rock fan, you should not be missing the exclusive interview with Danny Bowes and Luke Morley of Thunder. It's going to be on Play Rock UK this weekend on Friday, Saturday and Sunday at 6 p.m, 1800 hours UK time. That's 1 hour of exclusive conversation and music with Thunder. Play Rock UK, part of the Play Radio network.
Play 2 UK, The Tommy Boyd Show.
This evening between 8 and 10, it's Tommy Boyd and Steve and Ali are here, and G-Man's on Skype. Quick reminder, if you want to contact us with any thoughts you might have about anything you're hearing, email is a good way of doing it, studio@playradiouk.com. If you've got Skype, it's play.radio.uk. Fiona's busy elsewhere. Thanks for a mysterious email from Darcy Sato with a noise that Fiona made last night. He wants it analysed. We might have a listen to that before she comes in. Fiona will be here with me from 10 until 12. 01243 55 60 60. I'll say that again more slowly in a couple of minutes' time. If you're a new listener, good evening. 01243 55 6060. That's our switchboard number. G-Man, just before those commercials, you were going to tell us Ken Livingstone. You've done a U-turn on him. Which way round is it?
Well, I think I've done a double U-turn on him. When he was at the GLC, and in effect, he was in a non-London mayor role, basically. And I kind of was institutionally brought up to hate him. My family always voted Conservative. He was staunchly left Labour. And his decisions for London were not good for people. They were good for what was seen as good as unions and good as business. Then around about late 1985, I got a call. I heard that my grandparents were struggling to find different accommodation. Apparently, he'd been involved in their case. They were in council accommodation that was about to be relocated. And I actually heard that he'd taken a personal interest in trying to find them new accommodation. So I changed opinion, thinking, no, he's not just about, big business and making money for London. He actually does care about, little people. That's what we all were. So my opinion of him changed. All throughout, probably him being mayor, I agree with that opinion. I saw him making decisions that benefited Londoners and benefited London as a whole. And then I think, as Fat Steve mentioned, the comments that he used to make to journalists, and just his whole demeanour when he got beaten in the recent election, I didn't like. I don't think he took that defeat well. I think he tried to take Boris Johnson's feet out from under him, and I went back to kind of disliking him.
So you're back to loathing now. Has he changed, or have you changed? Or?
Like it.
Okay, I want to hear what Steve has to say about Ken.
Well, it's very strange that we both picked on the same person here, but like you grew up in London, there's old Red Ken, dreadful man. And in fact, without going into too many details, my father was prepared to go to prison with Ken Livingstone over one of his policies, and the policy was fares fair for Londoners. That was free public transport for all Londoners, and it was to be paid for by the shopkeepers. Unfortunately, though, my father's business was selling mopeds to commuters. So hang on a second, free buses, free trains, don't need the moped anymore, he's out of business. My dad had quite a prolific part to play in the part of London he was in, and it all went in the papers and blah, blah, blah. So obviously he grew up disliking Ken. Thought Margaret Thatcher dealt with him very nicely, buried away forever, or so we thought. But he came back, fair game to him, okay, and he got elected in because there was no one up against him that was ever going to stand a chance. Dreadful person, didn't like anything he really had to do, until, and here's the point, London was bombed. Now, he was in America on one of his jollies. He had a lot of jollies. He enjoyed his jollies. And he came back and he was interviewed on television about the London bombers. And his bottom lip was quivering. And I thought, damn it, I've been wrong. This man does care about London. He does care about the people who make up the city of London. He really does. Fair game. 2 days later...
There's a lot of parallels to Mayor Giuliani. I've read his book, which, although it titled Leadership, obviously included a lot of stuff about 9/11.
Yeah.
And a lot of New Yorkers would claim in the early days they hated Giuliani. He made up laws and rules that New Yorkers hated. But on 9/11, you know, the man became a central figure in New York politics for life.
Yeah, that was obviously a bigger platform than what we had here.
Yeah,
but
I'm just a similar parallel.
But Ken really earned my respect that day. Within 48 hours, he'd blown it back out of the water again. I can't remember what he did, but he did something stupid, and that was it, back to back. And I thought, okay, so what we're discussing here is how you form an opinion about someone. Can you then do a complete U-turn? Yes, I did, but actually, you know what? I was right the first time.
Well, I don't think you did a U-turn, did you? I think, actually...
Well, for 2 days I did.
Generally, you kind of didn't like him, don't like him, but you did see a little glimmer of caring there, so it made you feel a little bit different. But I think underlying all of that,
no, I disagree.
Was your opinion really hasn't changed, just a little blip.
No, because
little peak and trough.
For those 2 days, I would have said I was wrong about him. I used to dislike him. I was wrong. I'm prepared to admit that I was wrong. I saw him on the telly the other day. He does care about London. He does care about what happens. The man was truly
But it only
deeply
lasted for
upset.
2 days. So
yeah.
how is that a U-turn? I mean, it's not really, is it?
Yes, it is. That's how I felt. I know how I felt at the time. That's how I felt.
But for 2 days.
Yes, because
That's
the man's
not
such
changing
a
your opinion, is
blithering
it?
fool. He dragged me right back to where we started. He didn't have to. He could have stayed on that path of righteousness, and had he done that, he may still be mayor, but he chose not to. Why? Well, because he's a dick and because I was right in the first place.
Nah.
Have you ever changed your mind about anybody then, Ali?
Not to that great extent, no. No. I mean, I think I would be more along the lines of probably seeing people making a judgment about somebody. It was probably, you know, not wholly right. And then may see them on television interviewed or hear them talking, think, oh, actually, no, you know, that's quite a nice side of their character, and I've not seen that before. And I may just sort of move slightly in how I feel about them. I don't think I've ever. I don't feel those. Well, no, that's not true. I was going to say I don't feel those 2 extremes. I was going to say, you know, I don't really, really hate people, but I really, really love people. That's not true. There are people I really, really love, but I can't honestly say there are people I really, really hate. There are people I don't like the look of, or don't like
that's
the
a good question then.
Yeah.
Whilst we're talking personalities, because personalities are good fun, aren't they? They're more fun than issues, frankly. Who do you is there anybody you loathe, G-Man?
Piers Morgan.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
slimy.
Yeah,
I can understand.
Loathe
Yeah,
him?
I absolutely loathe the man.
You'd actually stick a milk bottle up him or something if you came across him,
I
would
don't
you?
have physical violence, but if I saw him in the street, I'd cross the road.
Metaphorically, obviously, no, you know.
Yeah,
condoning
we don't
violence.
need violence,
No.
absolutely.
No, you do metaphorical violence to Piers Morgan.
Yeah, because I think I've never heard him even so much as come close to the feeling of remorse for what he's done.
Well, what's he done? He's published some photographs.
He's done some very nasty things. When he rose to the top, he forgot everyone put him there, and he made sure that we stayed on top. He did very things at the Mirror, hounded some very innocent people, and never made any sort of apology.
But an email from Paul very quickly, G-Man. He says, loving the show, loving Ali and Steve. I used to hate Steve Davis as a snooker player, but I really like him.
But I know why.
I really like him now he's gone.
Yeah, I know why. Because he was so damn good and so damn boring and so damn ginger.
Yeah.
Those 3 things, all added together, you were never going to be
Ginger's
popular.
nice.
But he's grey now. Grey ginger. So we can forgive him that. And he's not really boring. And he's not much good at snooker anymore. So now we love him.
Do you have any inexplicable dislikes? Because I have an inexplicable dislike for a lady who I think is probably a very good broadcaster. And
I know who you're thinking of.
You don't.
Yes, I do, because I agree. Dreadful woman.
Who?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say it. I might be wrong. No,
We
but
were
I'm
discussing her earlier?
No.
No, okay.
I don't think so. For some reason, I have an inexplicable dislike for a woman who I'm sure is a fine person, and I know is an excellent journalist, and that's that woman Sian, who's on the sofa on Breakfast TV.
Oh, yes!
No, you see, look at that, look at that. You see that, G-Man? You see that, Steve?
Both
We
wrong.
see. We actually were discussing this
You're
the other
both
day.
wrong.
No,
Who was?
he was Steve and I.
Okay,
Steve said,
right.
"I really like that, Sean."
Yeah,
I said,
she's great.
because we've had this conversation before, Tommy, and you've actually said you didn't like
I
her.
don't
You
know why,
found
though.
her false, and I said that is how I. No, that is what you said, and that is precisely what I get. That is it's a smile. It's a media
It's
smile.
the way she looks at me in the morning as if I'm an old person.
It's a media
She
smile.
talks to me as if I'm an old person.
They are taught to.
Would you like to know what the weather's going to be doing today for you? Let's find out, shall we? From
It's
Mike.
conveyor belt presenting
No, I
techniques.
just don't like the implication that I'm not very quick.
Oh, I
It was
just
the way
I
she
just
talks to
hate the
me.
false smile. I
Okay,
can't bear
fine.
it. Anyway,
All right, but but I believe that is a loathing now, which is being what I do. See, when you like somebody and you do genuinely like them, you'll forgive them any of their
Yeah.
real faults. In
Yeah.
fact, you'll not even notice them.
Yeah.
In fact, you might even find them charming.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And all the tiny little things that are halfway decent about them, you will celebrate and laud and write them little cards about. Okay. All right. This is taxi driver syndrome. They've got a couple of opinions. They eliminate any information that comes their way that might cause them to adjust those opinions.
Yeah.
And they go hungrily devouring any piece of information, however slim, that might support these one or two, well, they call them opinions, we call them prejudices that they've got. Okay? But it's the same with people, isn't it? You know? If you start out kind of liking somebody, then all you ever hear about them, you will convert into support. And if you start out kind of not liking somebody terribly much, I don't like Alan Hansen when he does Match of the Day. I don't really know why. But when I saw him doing the advert for, which of the supermarkets is it? Morrison's.
All right. Yeah.
I jumped out of my sofa and went, aha! Ha! That's Alan Hansen, as he should be, pushing a trolley around, promoting a bottom of the range supermarket. You see?
For half
and then
a
I sat
million
down.
pound.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
we wouldn't do
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Then but the point is, then I sat down and I thought, how pathetic am I?
I'd love to do Match of the Day if he's not busy. If he's too busy doing Morrison's adverts.
Well, Martin Keown likes doing Match of the Day enough not to want to be the number 2 at Pompey. Do you bother about football then, G-Man?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a Spurs fan, so obviously I'm in a good mood at the moment.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
7 wins in a row.
Thank you so much for nicking Harry from us.
Well, to be honest, he did pretty damn quick. I was surprised at that.
Yes.
I think he knew there was a financial crisis, and I think he knew Spurs would pay, and they did pay very handsomely for him.
Yes.
I think he knew that would help Portsmouth,
They
and I
didn't.
think he realised that Tony Adams was a good, safe pair of hands to put it in.
Well, we shall see about that one.
We'll see about that one.
Thank you very much indeed for your Skype contribution this evening, G-Man. Look forward to talking to you again sometime. Be well.
Thank you, Tom. Bye, Steve. Bye, Ali.
Bye.
Cheers, man.
Nice man. Okay, so at home, or, well, you're going to be at home, I guess, if you're listening to us live on your PC or on your laptop. This evening from 8 until 10, we're here until midnight. From 8 until 10, we have Steve and Ali with us, who know each other because they work together. And we're looking at personalities and the main stories of the day. We've been talking a little bit about the economy, and we're going to have to talk about the 2-minute silence at some point today and what we think about that, because I think it probably, I nearly used the word intruded. It was an issue for an awful lot of people today in the street. Did people, I don't know. I wonder if in the high streets people stopped.
Well, no, they didn't. I got some insight on this because I was talking to a fella today on the phone earlier on, and he'd pulled over. He'd pulled his truck over, and he'd stopped by the side of Wimbledon Common, funnily enough. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And anyway, that's where he was, and he stopped. And he said to me, he said, I had a tear in my eye today, Steve, and I don't know why. He said, but I did. And I said, do you know what's funny? I felt the same. I've been through a few of these. Maybe it's because it's the 90th anniversary. Maybe it's the pictures in the press this morning of the 3 old boys going out, you know, and you look at them and you think, wow, they were there 90 years ago. Goodness, more than a lifetime ago. I don't know what it is, but I certainly felt a bit more emotional about it. And I said to him, had other folks stopped? And he said, no. The traffic just pretty much carried on as it was. I think offices kind of stopped.
Yeah.
The office I was in earlier on, it stopped, except for one person who was totally unaware and just carried on with her phone call and upset everyone else. But anyway.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. We're not going to be talking at length this evening, although we're not stopping comment on the John Gaunt issue. John Gaunt, who's been suspended from TalkSport. We had been planning to talk about that at some length and maybe even listen to the particular piece of audio this evening. But we took stock of it and decided, and I will just repeat our position on it, and I think it's sensible and a good use of the extra freedoms that we have on the internet. We've decided that since we've got a journalist and a broadcaster's livelihood in some jeopardy, and there's an ongoing inquiry into the incident which took place last Friday, we've decided to hold off listening to that audio or talking about that issue. And I do just want to go on record and say that my support is entirely with, my thoughts are entirely with John. It's a very difficult time for a broadcaster who is asked to do a particular job on the radio, one which a lot of people cherish, which is to be edgy, which is to be provocative in order to create some heat and some dynamism on their show. That's what the employers want. That's what the public and the listeners want. And then the broadcaster discovers that maybe simply through not paying attention, moment of poor judgment, you know, he puts the ball over the bar, in this case makes a remark that I suspect John would admit, maybe I got that one wrong. But we'll talk about it after TalkSport have decided what they are going to do with him. Although, as I say, I'm not going to stand in the way of anybody who wants to express any views about that issue. You can call 01243 55 60 60. Email is a good way of contacting us at your PC where you are right now, studio@playradiouk.com. It's 9 o'clock.
Go to playradiouk.com now and play blackjack for real money and get a $200 bonus when you sign up. Just click on the 888.com banner on our website now at playradiouk.com.
In a world obsessed with celebrities, one woman wanted only one thing: to wake up in the morning to a genuine poster of David Hasselhoff on her wall. To have that poster contain a personal message to her in his very own handwriting. She was faced with fake after fake. Where could she turn for help? The answer was simple: Universal Posters. They have a range of approved celebrity pictures, which even come complete with a personalized message in the celebrity's very own handwriting. This could all be yours for just £7.99. So go to playradiouk.com and click on the Universal Poster banner. Play Radio UK and Universal Posters. Now showing on a PC near you.
My mum logged on to Play Radio UK and treated herself to some amazing Swarovski jewellery from the Scala Jewellery. She looks $1 million. You should see all the other mums and dads' faces when she picks me up from school. She's the classiest mum ever. She said the Scala Jewellery is handmade in Italy with Swarovski stones. Mum said if I'm good, she'll buy me some of the Scala Jewellery when I'm a bit older. Have a look for yourself. Go to playradiouk.com and click on the Scala Jewellery today.
Broadcasting live to the UK. News, information, entertainment, and the best music from the past 40 years. This is Play 2 UK. Tommy Boyd. Call 01243 55 60 60. Email studio@playradiouk.com. Skype play.radio.uk. Now, live from the south coast of England, The Tommy Boyd Show, only on Play 2 UK.
Peter Collins has emailed in quite a nice email about John Gaunt, but Peter, I'm going to archive it until we dive into that discussion head first. As I mentioned just before the commercial break there, we're not going to talk about, at least I'm not going to be drawn on talking too much about the John Gaunt situation, but we are looking forward next Monday and Tuesday on Play Radio to a discussion which is devoted to the state of British radio, broadcasting, and the whole business of freedom of speech. That's next Monday and Tuesday, along with lots of other things. We're not devoting the entire programme to it, but that is going to be central to those two programmes on Monday and Tuesday from 8 o'clock. The state of radio at this moment in time, broadcasting generally, local radio in particular, one thing, and freedom of speech. And I guess that means, are we in a better position than any other disseminators of information in what's called internet radio or new media? Email studio@playradiouk.com. You can Skype play.radio.uk and the switchboard number 01243 55 60 60. So Remembrance Sunday, it was today. I think we all know what I mean by that because it's the 11th. 11th. Paul Anthony, who was on before us on this station, he said that he took a call on Sunday from somebody asking if we were going to be observing 2-minute silence on Tuesday. And Paul said, yes, I think we are. He said, well, you sure? Mm-hmm. And Paul said, yeah, I'm pretty certain we are, actually, but we kind of tend not to think that far ahead. But yeah, I'm pretty certain we will. It's quite difficult across the 12 stations that we've got, because some of them are automated. But he put the phone down on the chat and told me the story, and I said to him, do you think that person was half hoping that you weren't going to?
More than half hoping.
More, go on.
They want to complain.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And they've come hunting for you thinking, now these guys, they're a bit edgy, internet, new media, it's all new stuff. I don't think they're going to do it, and I'm going to write a letter of complaint. Dear sir, oh, I better just check first before I put a stamp on it. Oh, you are? Well, jolly good. Well, make sure you do. I'll be listening. I'll be checking that you do have your 2-minute silence, because it's very important, you know, although I can't possibly tell you why. You've got to feel a bit sorry for the guy, serial complainer. They love it, you know, and they go looking for these things.
There's lots of them.
Yeah, they love it.
We're back to BBC TV Breakfast, because when the Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross thing kicked off, whoever was on the sofa the following morning, the morning after, was saying, we've never had so many Bill.
Yeah.
We've never had so many emails about a single topic, and the ones we've had this one, it's felt very sort of gratified, because they'd had an awful lot of emails. My thought was, frankly, that tells you more about the people who watch your programme and have time on their hands in the morning to send emails, all right, than anything that Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand might stand for, which is fact, isn't it? What about the Remembrance Sunday, or the 2-minute silence for you, Ali? Did you observe it today?
No. I was actually working on my PC at home and completely forgot. That's the honest answer. If I'd have been out...
Yeah.
And I'd have, I think I was like last year or the year before, I remember I was out shopping, and suddenly I was aware of people stopping. Yeah. So I did, you know, because, it's kind of not something I put in my diary.
No.
Which sounds, it's not that I'm
When was the last time you observed any silence for anybody? See, it's football
funeral.
fans.
The funeral recently, yeah.
Oh, okay. Football fans used to do it all the time. Every other game, somebody had died.
Yeah.
You know what the odds are.
Yeah.
and so both teams would have to gather around the centre circle. And these blokes, pumped up and ready to go, really want to give it their all. They've been jumping up and down, you know, making a clatter with their studs in the dressing room for about 20 minutes, banging on the old dressing room, on the old locker doors and everything, pumping themselves up, getting themselves all Ellerman rubbed and everything. And then suddenly they've got to stand there in the cold rain with their little shorts on for a minute.
But isn't that because some footballer, trainer, whatever died?
Yeah.
And that's just, you know, the family of football must come together in grief.
Yeah.
Today was different. Hundreds of thousands of men died in all the wars. Millions and millions and millions of lives were affected by the wars. That is important. The deputy sub-managers, trainers, football grass cutters of Scunthorpe, Lord knows where United, who died at the age of 57 of a tragic heart. Very sad. We don't actually need any minute silence. Today was different, and I think it's absolutely shameful anybody that, first of all, it doesn't need to be in your diary, it should be in your psyche, but it's shameful anyone who didn't just down tools just for a moment and just think. And you said earlier on, oh, you know, it's difficult, busy life, you start thinking about, you know, what you're going to have for lunch and your phone call and all the rest of it. Do you know what? No. Actually, no. I stopped and I did think about it.
What did you think?
There's the 3 old guys. Did we see them?
Yeah.
The youngest one's 108. The middle one's 110. The old fella, he's 112. Henry, Harry and Bill. Great names, aren't they? They're old men in wheelchairs. Yeah, and they're all hunched up and they can hardly look up and they got their poppies and you kind of keep your fingers crossed they make it through the day. But do you know what? They weren't. When they went out and fought, they were boys. They were young boys. They were going out fighting for what they believed in. And most of their mates didn't make it. A lot of their mates had bullets through the brain, and they sort of turned to left and go, here, Fred, where's he gone? Oh, he's lying in a heap on all his brains all over my boots. That's not very nice, is it? And it doesn't really matter what conflict it is, whether it's the Falkland Island conflict, what's going on in Iraq at the moment, or World War I or World War II. whatever you believe about the wars, these people have gone out and fought and risked their lives. And the country that we've got now and the world that we've got now, we certainly owe to those people that went out in World War II. And in this modern day and age of everything's immediate, internet, so far, got really fast internet, my mobile phone's really good, all of it, we just don't stop and actually think about how damn lucky we are that we live in this country, in this world, and we do owe it to those people. Now, I'm not some old sentimental fart, and I've never been in the armed services, and none of my family have, or anything, and all the rest of it, but I have had friends who did fight, and relatives that did fight, and they're not with us anymore, but I had spoken to them, and it was a terrible thing. For the fighters, it was a terrible, terrible thing. If we can't down tools for 2 minutes and just have a little think about that, I think it's disgraceful. And I'm glad we do. And I think most people did. And I think most of the media respected it, from what I understand as well. Most media did go with the old 2-minute silence. There'll probably be a few people that sort of went, nah, it doesn't matter anymore, and broke the rules. It does matter. It really, really does.
Yeah, but just because I didn't do it today doesn't necessarily mean I never do it. Because every time I talk to my mother, who was a young girl in the war, and she talks about, you know, the bombing of their houses and numerous stories. It's only actually as I've got older that I absorb more of it, because you're more interested as you get older, I think, in actually what happened to your parents, and, you know, how did they live and what did they go through. Every time we talk about her experiences, I realise that we know absolutely nothing of how they felt and what they went through. We can't comprehend how difficult it was. I mean, obviously, you know, the guys out there dying, but also for the families and the people being bombed back here and hiding in bunkers and all that sort of stuff. The fear. My mother's never lost the fear from the sound of a siren, ever. So every time I converse with her, I grow in my knowledge of how difficult it was for them. So, and I do actually respect her more every time I hear, you know, a new story about what she went through. So I don't think I'm not a disrespectful person, not at all. It's just that, you know, in fact, funny enough, I thought it went on Sunday. I think because it was a work day and I was kind of at my PC, it just didn't occur to me. If it had been, you know, where I
Alison,
normally
this is a huge working out of a very small piece of justifiable guilt in your part, and you are forgiven, my child. But I have this. Look, you were on your own.
Yeah.
So you may not have been thinking about.
No, I wasn't. No.
But you were silent.
That's not.
Well,
the
there
point.
was the odd tippy tappy of the keyboard.
So you will live forever. I would say this. Perhaps we need two moments of remembrance for the enormous casualties of the Second World War and the enormous casualties of the First World War, because there are enormous distinctions between the two of them, even though the loss of life was more or less commensurate. I agree with Steve entirely that we should stop and think about the sacrifices that I have to say I would have made, I would have expected my sons to make, to fight Nazi Germany and all that stood for. When I stop and think about the First World War, I have nothing but pity for the men who had no choice, but most of them were conscripted to go and die in the mud and the blood of the trenches, and the futility of that war. But I'm afraid the thought that I have, which is almost always uppermost in my mind, is the absolute grotesque stupidity, greed and arrogance of the kings of the major European states and their pretty poodleish politicians and the generals who were hungry for to be able to do the thing that they've been trained to do, which is to send cavalry charges across the mud towards the Gatling guns that were aimed against them. It was a ludicrous exercise, probably best enshrined in that Richard Attenborough film, Oh, What a Lovely War, which was about as ludicrous as the entire thing was. So if I were to stand and observe 2 minutes silence and allow my mind to stay in one place whilst thinking about the First World War, I think there's an important lesson to be learned there, which is, as the Germans said about the British troops, they are lions led by donkeys. And everybody who was running the country, and Germany, and Austria-Hungary, and France, and all the countries that took part in the First World War, quite frankly, everybody who was running those countries They should hang their heads in shame wherever they are, and we should remember that we must never allow people like that into any position of influence again, whether it's in Downing Street or the White House or local council or even as a bloody head of a family, because there are terrible, short-sighted, cruel tyrants, not just in power or in the military, but also in workplaces and even in family homes. And they're the enemy, and those are the people that will be uppermost in mind. So there will be anger and hatred in my mind, high in my mind, thinking about the First World War. But the Second World War, I think Steve had it right on the button.
I was going to say, what's the process going through your mind in those 2 minutes?
The lives that were destroyed. The fact that a man would go and get on a ship and go out into the middle of the sea, and he would try and shoot the submarines that were shooting at him, that were stopping the food coming through to feed the people back home. I think about him as a person. I'm a man. He probably had kids just like me, had a wife just like me, okay? And he went out there and he did that. And for the most part, they did it with pride, and they did it, I wouldn't say willingly. I'm sure it wasn't really willingly, but they went out and did it. The Second World War wasn't all bad. If you talk to people that remember it, a lot of them will have very fond memories about the war. It was a great time of bringing people together.
And the camaraderie.
And to a point, my grandparents are no longer with us. My grandfather couldn't fight because he had a disability, but he had a big part to play with ambulances in London, all the rest of it. Anyway, he spoke often quite fondly, even though he lost a lot of his friends, about the wartime and how it brought people together and where he lived, and his daughter growing up in the countryside. She went away to stay with her nana and all the rest of it. And whilst it was terrible, somehow it was a very important part of what they went through, and it would almost be hard to imagine my grandparents' life without the war, as it was called, the war. It was just referred to as the war. I mean, we've moved on a bit since then because we've had a few other rucks and run-ins and all the rest of it.
Well, that's the other thing. Do you, in these 2 minutes, are you only concentrating on those wars, or are you actually thinking about the more recent conflicts?
Yes, I am.
Them, can we?
I am. Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I am, because as a teenager, we had the Falklands conflict. Okay, and that was a war. I know they called it a conflict, but that was a war. Basically, there was a block of our land, doesn't matter where it was, and I don't care about the arguments whether it was our land or not. As far as it was our land, some foreigners, chappies, came in and started messing with our folk, so we sent our boys in there to sort it out. And at the time, I remember, I was quite young, I was at school, I wasn't that bothered, but I remember it all looked very sort of easy and gung-ho. We went in and we stormed in and we marched to Goose Green and we sent the nasty argies out. But I've seen programmes on it since, and you know what? It wasn't that easy. Men did die. They were sent into valleys and gullies where the argies were waiting for them, and they just sat there picking them off and all the rest of it. They sunk 2 of our battleships, you know, a lot of people went down with those. They messed about with the helicopters sent in to rescue. They weren't that silly. That was a war. That was a war just like any other, but it didn't come to the homeland, as no war has done since the war, i.e. World War II. It didn't come to the homeland. So now we have television wars. Wars take place on television, don't they? And in the paper and a little bit on the radio. They don't actually come home. When you get home tonight, when I get home, my house will still be there. And we're all very safe in that knowledge. Whereas in World War II, of course, it was quite different. But I think you've got to think about the whole thing, collectively, all of them, all of the services, all of the people, all of the sacrifices, both the people at home and the people abroad, the soldiers. It's just the whole thing. But we would be in a radically different world had they not done that, had they not made that sacrifice. And to buy a poppy, chuck a couple of quid in the pot, and just to break your day, just for a couple of minutes, just to think about that. And I think in your mind say, you know what, thanks very much. Very grateful to you for that.
Email from Louise, who says, I'm a firm believer in freedom of speech. However, this is something we were talking about a bit earlier on. However, sometimes this freedom of speech has to be tempered by the freedom to be free from the worst insults. I'm a cab driver, and a couple of years ago I picked up 3 young men whilst listening to a radio station with a Jewish presenter. When one of the men realised who was on the radio, he called me a rude word, Jew-loving rude word. I threw them out straight away. On Sunday, a friend asked me if I would throw Nick Griffin, I believe he's the leader of the BNP, out of my cab if it meant losing a £100 fare? My answer was simple. Of course, I would. We lose our souls if we lose our principles for pieces of silver. Louise makes an interesting point. I'm not sure whether it's right of Louise to refuse a fare, whether it's £100 or a couple of quid, to somebody because Louise's perception, personal perception, is that that person has unacceptable views. Because I haven't met Nick Griffin.
Yeah.
I think I know what he stands for because I've been told what he stands for by the press.
Yeah.
But I've hardly ever heard him speak. I've seen him interviewed by Paxman and carved to pieces quite brilliantly, so I know he's not particularly competent, but I don't know if he's sufficiently obnoxious or dangerous for me to want to say, sorry, I'm not going to drive you where you want to go, even though it's going to cost me £100. What do you say, Steve?
If he's not expressing his views, if he's sitting in the back of the cab and he's doing a few text messages and he's on his way home to his wife and his children, I think there's a problem. If he gets in the back of your cab and starts spouting off the rhetoric that you just, I think you could politely say, I'm terribly sorry, but you know what, I'm calling in early tonight, so you'll have to get a bus. I don't think there's a problem with that. If you're just sitting there, then really, you know, kind of just, that's fine, really. If I was a cab driver and Ken Livingstone got in, I'd run him back. If he wants to start telling me all about it, out you get. It's, you know, if he needs a lift home or he needs a lift to work, I'll do it.
But whilst we're talking about taxis then, Stephen, Ali, and you listening as well, it doesn't work the other way round. Because when they've got you in the back of their cab for between 7 and 15 minutes, which is about the average black cab taxi trip, you get the works, don't you? The last time I got a black cab, the bloke couldn't wait to start telling me, now what was it he was on about? About how the economy has been totally screwed by X, Y and Z, and how the people who are going to really suffer as a result of their incompetence is taxi drivers.
Oh, obviously.
And I had to put up with it for the whole of the way home.
Slide the glass.
No, you can't. You
I
can't
do.
because you do.
Yeah. I don't want him rattling on, do I? Oh, he gets away in my cab. I don't care. Not interested. I'll pick my mobile up. Hello? Oh, yeah, hi, yeah, I'm in a black cab. Yeah, go on, tell me all about it. I'm listening.
I used to work with a guy who was quite well known, and I got in a cab one time, and this bloke said to me, do you know, he said, I often end up driving your mate. I said, oh, do you? I said, that's interesting. Yeah, he said, isn't he dozy? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, whenever he gets in my cab, he always says, do you mind? I'm just going to have 10 minutes sleep.
Yes, that's the one.
So I said to this bloke next time I saw him, I said, are you always nodding off in the back of taxi cabs? He said, I think I know the driver you mean. He said, that's how I get out of it every time.
Every time.
It's 9:20. A reminder, it's studio at playradiouk.com. If you're by your PC, your laptop, of course you are. If you're listening live, that's the best way to get through to us. And email our switchboard number 01243 55 60 60. Had some nice Skype calls this evening. If you're Skype abled, it's play.radio.uk is our address.
Play 2 UK headlines.
A man's been charged with the murder of a teenage model, Amy Lee Barnes, who was 19, died after being found with stab wounds at her home in Falmouth in Bolton on Saturday. 21-year-old Ricardo Morrison from Birmingham will appear in court tomorrow. 3 people are facing long jail sentences for causing the death of an abused baby. The 17-month-old boy from North London suffered multiple injuries in the last 8 months of his life. There's a political battle going on over tax. The Tories are promising breaks for companies who employ people who've been on the dole for 3 months or more. A woman given the world's first ovary transplant has had a baby girl. The 38-year-old, who's from Germany, conceived shortly after surgery, has given birth by caesarean section. She received a whole ovary from her identical twin last year. The nation, most of it, paused today to mark the 90th anniversary of the end of the First World War. 3 of the last surviving veterans laid wreaths at the Cenotaph in London. And finally, it's the end of an era for the QE2. A huge firework display tonight will mark its last visit to Southampton.
Play 2 UK weather.
Further showers this evening across Scotland and western parts of Britain. These will ease overnight, with most parts becoming dry by dawn. Chilly inland with a local ground frost. Tomorrow, apart from a few showers across parts of Scotland, most areas will have a dry day, with long spells of sunshine, feeling pleasant as winds become light.
You're up to date on Play 2 UK. Heard a song you love? Then help us by buying your favourite chart CD through Amazon. Just click on the banner at playradiouk.com. Here at Play Radio UK, we're dedicated to providing you with a fully interactive website and music service. Choose from 11 stations playing all kinds of music 24 hours a day. While away the hours with loads of games in the playground. Interact with other users and find answers to all your technical problems in the forums. Find out who's on when, what we're up to and what we look like. Although some of us are more photogenic than others. PlayRadioUK.com. Internet radio, your way.
Something TV is here and offers the widest range of viewing at the best possible prices. As well as our standard packages offering the best in film, family entertainment and radio, you can add Setanta Sports for just $9.99 a month to enjoy the very best of this season's footballing action direct to your sofa. Add in phone and broadband for just an extra tenner a month and you really have got something for everyone. Call 0871 664 1500 or go to www.something.info to find out more.
Tommy Boyd on Play 2 UK, the original cunning linguist.
Is that Fat Steve we got back?
Yes.
Hello. I thought it was you Skyped and then I screwed up and dropped you off. Sorry about that.
It's okay. But yeah, I had Skyped in when we were on Moments of Silence.
Oh, yeah.
Over here we tend to have them at specific things. Like I remember when I was in high school, when the space shuttle exploded. And we had a moment of silence. You know, and if a specific person dies, but we don't have like a specific day where we all do a moment of silence for an exact amount of time at an exact
In
period.
what way, if any, then, across the nation, are the dead of the Second and First World War? What was the American dead in those two wars? Any idea? It's got to run into seven figures, hasn't it?
I would imagine, but I don't know.
No, it's significant. Is there any nationwide commemoration?
Yeah, it's a bank holiday today.
It's a bank holiday today to commemorate the dead, the American dead of all wars.
Yeah, it's Veterans Day.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, of course, I heard of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good name for it.
And that's actually a really good idea, to
Yeah, I
be
like
honest. Because
It'd give you time to remember to think about it, wouldn't it? You had the whole day. Oh,
You've
yes.
got the day. You've got the day.
The
It's
2
marked
minutes at a specific time does seem a bit random. And, you know, it's like, you know, when I was hearing Steve criticizing Allie, I mean, it's like, I don't think her patriotism is a question because she has poor time management skills.
Yeah.
It's the time that the guns fell silent on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month.
Yeah.
It's not random. Just to clear that point up.
But you could pick any event at random to remember the war dead.
Oh, yeah, you could, but it's to commemorate the end of the First World War, the 11th hour. It kind of works,
Right.
doesn't it? It's very showbiz.
But I'm saying
11,
the
11,
end
11.
of the First World War being the time that you remember the war dead is just a random choice.
Yeah, we could have done it.
Day off's better, actually.
Yeah.
Much better.
A day off.
Well, we don't give her that.
Why not?
That's because she was
Go
working.
shopping or something, couldn't we? Yeah.
No,
a day off.
because then you could just concentrate that. You know what that day is for.
Well, what do you do then in the day then to devote an entire day to whatever?
Go to a museum.
You go to a museum.
Twaddle,
museum.
come
What,
on.
and look at saucepans or
Yeah.
what? Waxworks.
Twaddle, Ali.
Think this one
Twaddle.
through. Twaddle,
Perhaps
mate.
if I had kids, I might, you know,
Oh, yeah,
them to-
absolutely.
celebration or a ceremony or something. But
Because
as an adult, you don't do things like that.
in 1 or 2 generations' time, it's going to be very, very, very different. Our children are learning a little bit about the wars in their history, but not a lot. Just that it's kind of a bit of a gloss over.
1-0 to Europe, and that's kind of it. Move on.
When they're adults,
but
they're going to know less about it than we do.
But we're having wars now, so there'll be plenty of people in
but
wheelchairs
what I'm saying is it's
with
going
no
to,
legs
yes, it's going to move
pitch
on.
up at the cenotaph.
It is going to move
But we don't
on.
remember the Crimean War
Exactly.
that well.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's modern history wars that we're looking at. The ones that affect our lives
You
now.
Americans remember your Civil War quite well, because you still sort of, as a nation, vote more or less along those lines, don't you?
Well, it's like we managed to surprise everyone this year. Surprise me, even. It's and it's weird because it's like something you were talking about yesterday, saying how you think of Americans as generally being to the right of the UK, and like your average liberal in America is what, like a David Cameron, I think you said.
Yeah.
And whereas, the election of Obama sort of changes the whole picture almost as much as if, say, Nick Griffin was your neighbor and then he decided to adopt a black kid. You'd be like, wait a second. Maybe things aren't as I thought. Maybe now I'm more racist.
Here's this. The world's two most prominent and probably best paid sportsmen are both mixed race. And the most powerful man in the Western world, possibly the world, is mixed race.
Yep. Tiger Woods, Lewis Hamilton, Mr. Obama.
Mr. Obama.
Obama, by the way, calls himself biracial. No.
Does he?
But only because these PR people have told him to. We'll call him what we want.
I think that's a better term, actually.
Well, I think that's the weird thing about that is I thought up a question that sort of points out how silly the whole argument on whether he's black or mixed race is. What are his children?
Yeah, good call.
There's a good point, yeah.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
And he's been, am I right in saying, Steve, he's been to the White House?
Today,
He's met with George
today.
W., hasn't he? And they spent 2 hours?
Yeah.
What were they talking about? Redecorating the toilets? New carpet for the Oval Office? Guantanamo Bay? It's got to be an awkward conversation, hasn't it? Hello, old-timer. Hello, new-timer. It's got to be a tricky one, that. I'd love to be in on that. I really would.
Yeah.
First thing is congratulations on winning. Yeah. I understand you're going to
I'll bet he likes Obama better than McCain.
Yeah, most people did, didn't they? That was the general feeling. Certainly over here, I don't know. Do you think George W. cares? I mean, do you care when you step out? Like Mr. Blair recently popped off to see the Queen and said, "I've had enough. I'm off. Here's the keys to Mr. Brown. He's off now." I don't know what he's doing. Is he touring? Is he over your neck of the woods, touring America? I think
he's been here.
Do they
signing
care?
books in New York not long ago.
Do they care, or is it all about book rights and film deals and speeches at Harvard?
Yeah,
well,
it must feel
George
like a little
Bush would
death.
care if one of his close allies / friends, like perhaps Dick Cheney. I mean, I don't even know how close they personally are, but if someone like that was running for president, he would have gotten out there for a quick campaign for him and everything.
Yeah.
But McCain just tried to distance. I mean, he even said during the debates, "I'm not George Bush." It's like Bush has got to hate him.
Yeah, Al Gore said recently when he flew into London and somebody asked him whether it was still in his mind that he was so close to being the President of the United States. And he replied, and this may well apply to the loss of power of Blair and what George Bush is about to experience. He said, it was when I was taking off my belt to come through security at Heathrow Airport, I got to thinking how different it used to be on Air Force One.
Yes. Very good
And
point.
Tony Blair, when he was being driven away from Downing Street after he left office,
In a different car.
wondered why the car had stopped.
Yes.
The reason for that was because it had hit a traffic light,
That's it.
and for the previous 11 years, the Prime Minister's car had been allowed to go straight through traffic lights for security reasons. So it's got to be those big things, hasn't it, Steve?
Did they close off entire streets over there?
No,
for
just
the
They just shot people that got in the way.
the motorcycles would just go on ahead, and
because they do in New York, they closed entire streets. It was
for the president.
And when the Republican convention was there, that was probably one of the scariest moments of my life.
What's that? When that happened?
Well, when the Republican convention was, it was in 2004. So, it still shades of 9/11. You're thinking, and the Republicans weren't really wanted in New York, so you're thinking there might be something that's going to happen. And then there was this huge anti-Republican protest going down 15th Street, which was my street. And I went outside, and there was this bike shop next to me. This woman was filling her bike, and I guess she wasn't paying attention, but her tire exploded.
Yeah.
And just hearing that pop right next to me is more scary than any of the actual near-death experiences I've had, just because I was so sure it was a bomb.
That's what terrorism's all about, though. That's what terrorism is all about. Terror. It's about terror. It's not about the people that they wipe out on the day. They don't know anything about it.
So are you saying that the terrorists killed John Charles Menendez by default, because by creating that atmosphere...
Yes, he was a victim,
of
like
horrific
all the others.
fear.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
It brought the police officers to the level of panic, which appears to have resulted in that...
He was a victim just like any other. As were the policemen that shot him, quite frankly. They were victims of the whole thing.
Stay with us, Steve, if you would, in Atlanta. I have this from Tamsin, who has emailed... People you used to hate, she says. I hated Thatcher for many years, her lack of social conscience, her arrogance. Anyway, surprisingly now, after much reflection, she says, I still hate her. Do you think we should replace the word Nazi with Thatcher? That's too strong.
Very much so.
Tamsin, but I know you're chewing the fat. She says, very occasionally when I'm in a bad mood, I replay that video of her leaving Downing Street. Anyway, everybody else I love, even Piers Morgan.
Which goes to prove your argument holds absolutely no foundation. She was in tears when she left Downing Street, and I saw her return to her home. She lived very close to Crystal Palace. When she left Downing Street, she came home, and she'd clearly been crying all the way. She had no social conscience. She didn't care about what she was doing. Why was she so damned upset to lose the gig? I looked into that woman's eyes. She cared. I was there.
Okay. Tamsin emails, Tommy, I can understand your reasons for not discussing the John Gaunt thing until Talk Sport have delivered their verdict. But she says, surely something should be said about this sudden fear of offending and panicky censorship. It will be, Tamsin. We'll get to that on Monday and Tuesday of next week, when we're going to give over quite a bit of both programmes to talking about the state of radio, broadcasting and journalism in general, the dissemination of new ideas, the expression of ideas using contemporary language and thought, and freedom of speech in general. Is there any threat to freedom of speech at the moment? Because there do appear to be a small group of people who think they know what's best for us. Be talking about that on Monday and Tuesday. What else has been high on your mind on the national international agenda, young Steve?
Well, this story about this young 13-year-old girl, Hannah Jones, who I understand that she's had a lot of illness in her life. She's 13 years old, had a lot of illness in her life, and it has weakened her heart. And her local primary healthcare trust had tried to force her to have a heart transplant, and it all ended up in court, which is all very sad. And apparently they've withdrawn it now. They're not going to force her, and she has chosen to live her life naturally, and she's been told that she will die because her heart is not up to the job. My question on that is, first of all, of course, it's extraordinarily sad. I think the death of a child for family and for communities and for society in general is desperately sad. But at what age does a person have the right to make up his or her mind about whether they should choose to live or die? I'm a parent. I've got a child of exactly that age, and I have a very mature daughter. My instinct, of course, would be to protect her and to make sure that she had. This young girl has said she wants to die with dignity. I don't believe what's important is how you die. I believe what is important is how you live. And her life, I think, has pretty much been peppered with hospital visits. And clearly, if she has a heart transplant and survives, she's going to be on medication, all the rest of it. But does she know just how wonderful life is? Does she know just what she is missing? Forget all the sadness, forget all the families. Does she know what she's giving up? I don't think she does. I don't think at 13 you do know what you're giving up, or potentially giving up. And most news stories don't kind of get to me too much, because I understand emotive words are being used and all the rest of it, and a lot of it's sort of what they couldn't find out they made up. But that story, I think, is desperately sad, because there is no right answer. Nobody is going to be able to say, no, 13-year-olds can't possibly make up their own mind, or yes, 13-year-olds possibly can make up their own mind. It is always going to be down to the individual. And I don't really want to talk about her particularly, But if you put yourself in that position, if and maybe you're not a parent, but maybe you've got a child in your family, and you were faced with this, would you just not want to do everything imaginable to just say, look, you just got to go for it, because life is fantastic. You've not had the chance to have the good bits. For goodness sake, give yourself a fighting chance to have the good bits. But that story this morning saw that. Very upsetting. Very, very sad.
Okay. These are the views of Steve. He's good, isn't he?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Email studio@playradiouk.com on that story, or anything that's high in your mind that we've been discussing this evening or have not. Skype, our address is play.radio.uk. You can call 01243 55 60 60. It's 20 to 10.
PlayRadioUK.com is offering you the chance to get your hands on rock, metal and punk t-shirt, plus other band merchandise from just £11.95. Also includes free UK shipping. For more details, click on the Loud Clothing banner at PlayRadioUK.com.
In a world obsessed with celebrities, one woman wanted only one thing: to wake up in the morning to a genuine poster of David Hasselhoff on her wall. To have that poster contain a personal message to her in his very own handwriting. She was faced with fake after fake. Where could she turn for help? The answer was simple: Universal Posters. They have a range of approved celebrity pictures, which even come complete with a personalized message in the celebrity's very own handwriting. This could all be yours for just £7.99. So go to PlayRadioUK.com and click on the Universal Poster banner. Play Radio UK and Universal Posters. Now showing on a PC near you.
Right then, what was the web address?
passiononline.co.uk.
Oh, you would look really sexy in that. Okay, that's in the shopping cart.
Imagine the fun we could have with them.
Yeah. Okay, I've ordered something for you. Something for us. How about this for me?
PassionOnline.co.uk has something for everybody, with a fast, discreet delivery service, competitive pricing, and a free gift with every order for a limited time. See our massive product mix online right now. Click PassionOnline.co.uk, the world's sexiest online shop.
Tommy Boyd on Play 2 UK, a super song of sanctity in a weird and wacky world.
This evening we put talking about John Gaunt on hold. We've decided that we're going to come back to that once TalkSport have decided what they're going to do with him. But there are lots of issues there connected with broadcasting and radio, which obviously listening is something that you're interested in. The possibilities that the internet has different freedoms of speech, how those freedoms of speech get used, whether the license fee or the choice of commercial broadcasting that you make is exercising whatever freedoms it has correctly, whether the organisations, the members of the public who make the complaints are exercising their freedoms to invigilate and to complain intelligently and sensibly, whether they're helping you become a responsible citizen or whether they're eroding your right to a whole range of information, which is what you need, and if you're going to make an informed opinion about anything. We're going to be talking about that on Monday and Tuesday of next week from 8 o'clock on Play 2. On Play Radio UK, and I'm looking forward to it. Quick one from Happy Tree says, on the business of 1 minute silence, Stephen Alley, who are with us until 10. One experience I had with observing a minute's silence was when I was a language assistant in a French secondary school. It was for the death of former president and icon of reform Francois Mitterrand in 1996. I was doing a conversation class for 14 to 15-year-olds. I got on very well with the class. We were always joking around, so it was difficult to get them to recognise the significance of the moment, especially as I, a foreigner, didn't really have the cultural experience to understand the impact Mitterrand had had. So I asked them all to stay quiet and still from 11 o'clock to 11:01, and they did their best. But after about 15 seconds, the giggling started, and unfortunately after about 20 seconds more, they got me giggling as well. The situation became all the funnier since we were under an unspoken but very tangible pressure from each other not to laugh. The naughtiness became so infectious that by the end of the minute and beyond we were crying with guilty laughter. I stood there afterwards with the class, all looking to me for guidance in how to recover from the atmosphere hanging in the air. So I cobbled together some guff about how we as a society don't deal with death very well. We try not to think too much about it. And added that if Mitterrand had been looking in, he'd understand and he'd have a chuckle along with us. It also provided me with a good topic for the following week, because we all decided we'd better learn who he was quick. Together. So now, he says, every time there's a silence to be observed, what I think about most is that scene and the many different ways we deal with death and sacrifice. Quality email. Thank you for that, Happy Tree. What else has caught your eye, Steve? I know the property market is something you know a little bit more about than many.
Yeah, I mean, RICS, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, today have said, shock horror, stop the front pages, that property sales are the lowest level they have been for 30 years. That's a long time. That's a very long time. And frankly, it's a good thing. We need it. Property market has exploded in this country, to the point that if you ever dare pick up your local paper and you look at the price of housing there, you think, no, that can't possibly be right. It really can't possibly be right. And I've been watching this very closely for a number of years, and I said probably about 4 years ago, boys and girls, let's stop the ride. Let's stop it. Put the brakes on. For goodness sake, put the brakes on. This is getting out of control. We're going faster and faster and faster, and we're heading for that cliff edge, and we all know what's coming. It happened before, and it's happening again, but actually it is a good thing. But again, going back to our earlier point, the media don't deal with it very well. They don't deal with it very well at all. You get all this homes being repossessed. They're not homes, they're properties.
Come back to that point. You make an important point. There are repossessions taking place.
Yep.
But your beef is that they are less the places where families congregate and live their lives together. They're more the investments that people who are doing buy-to-rent investments were up to. Those are largely the ones that are going back. And so who should care about that? Because they were only buying that bricks and mortar in order to try and make themselves rich, not because they needed a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
That is a very good point.
And most repossessions, they don't need to send a locksmith. They've already got the keys because the people have gone, there's the keys, back, we're walking away. That was true last time, and it's true this time. And don't care what anyone says, I know this is right. Most estate agents, very few estate agents, if one's listening, ring up, tell me I'm wrong, have gone out, knocked on the door, hello there, terribly sorry, got to repossess the home, if you wouldn't mind moving out. They're not there, they've gone. One of the problems is what I call mantelpiece mentality. Right? They know they got a bit of a problem. They stopped the direct debit thing and they meant to write the check, but they didn't. The letter arrives. They put it on the mantelpiece. They don't open it because they know what it says in there. And I'm telling you right now, if you are in that position, that is the wrong thing to do. Because if you talk to your lender, most lenders do not want to repossess. It's the last thing they want to do. They want to work it through with you. And even if it gets to the point where they're saying, look, sorry, we are a bit unpleasant, we're going to take you to court. You stand in front of the judge and say, look, Judge, I had a great job. I ran a department selling watches, and unfortunately the company went bust. And now I'm cooking pizzas in the evenings after 10 o'clock. My wife's got herself a part-time job; she's working at school and everything. But we can't make that £1,000 a month. And the judge said, "Well, what can you make?" And they say, "Well, look, we can probably make £300 a month." That judge will say, "Fine, you make that payment of £300 a month. You, Mr. Building Society, you go away, you restructure this mortgage, you lengthen it." That's the easiest route round it. For most people, that's possible. You do not repossess, and that's what will happen. So, the press are reporting it very irresponsibly. This mantelpiece mentality of people ignoring the problems coming at them, and that is a human frailty. But that's where most of the problems arise. And I know that in the last recession, a very large number of repossessions were investments that have been bought by characters that shouldn't have been buying them. It's certainly true now. There are a small number of homes going, and I'm quite sure folk will let us know by email or by Skype. There are a small number of folk, but it is not the major problem that the press like to make it. And in fact, the whole thing of property prices falling, we've seen in the UK on average, and I am going from top to bottom, something around 15% to 20% at the moment. We've got more to come, folks. Guaranteed, absolutely 100%. As I sit here, there'll be another 10%. We will end up 30% lower than where we were in the summer of 2007. You may not see that because you probably didn't know how much your house was worth in the summer of 2007. You had a vague idea. But people in the trade know that. And that correction of about 30% is what a lot of folk have been saying the property market needed, that it was kind of overvalued to the tune of about 30%. And some folks have been saying that really for the last couple of years. So it's a good thing. And negative equity is not a nice thing. It's an uncomfortable position to be in. I know, because I've been there, but actually rationalise it. And unless you really have to move right now, it kind of doesn't matter. It's just unpleasant. It sits there in the back of your mind, think, oh, we bought it for 200 grand and now it's only worth 150.
We're being asked to be a little bit concerned about estate agents who are selling on average now 10 houses per month, whereas this time last month it was 11.5 houses per month or whatever.
Yeah.
But one thing always occurs to me, when those property prices were going up by 7% a month, do I remember that? Vaguely. Estate agents were presumably still charging the same percentage on the sale that they were charging 20 years ago, when the value of a piece of property was probably about a third of what it was allegedly 18 months ago. Might they have played some part in pushing up prices? Because after all, their profit depended on it.
No. And that's what people like to think. And they love to beat up on the estate agent. And it is true that what will happen is, if you get 3 agents round to value your home, you will get one that will go higher, certainly, than the other 2. Now, that's the fella that probably works for a corporate, and his targets are instructions, i.e. properties on the market. That's what he's got. He's got a quota to get. So he comes round and he says, oh, Mr. Boyd, lovely house. I know it's worth 300,000, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you it's worth about 330 to 340. I'll watch your face. Okay. If there's shock horror, I'll backpedal a little bit. If you look a bit disappointed, I'll step it up a wee bit, but I'm going to make sure I'm the highest valuation. Then the chap will come round from your village who's been there a long time and does know his stuff, and he's going to say, look, I know you've had other people in and I'm sure they've said a bit more, but here's what it's really worth, and here is the comparable evidence to kind of prove that and justify. You can never prove it, but he should be able to justify it. You've got a lovely 16th century 8-bedroom mansion. Here's one I sold earlier, and I'll make the comparisons and you can understand the reason. Then there'll be another chap that just kind of hasn't got a clue what he's doing, and he'll be away with the fairies low, high, whatever. I've always said to people, you should take the average of the 3 somewhere, but never, ever, ever go with the top fella, because he's wrong. He's always wrong. But he's not pushing up prices. How is he pushing up prices? I tell you who's pushing up prices. The buyer. Because he's the one that agrees to pay it. It's as simple as that. Market forces.
He knows his stuff, doesn't he? This is interesting. You want to come back sometime and just tell us a little bit more about our house, because our house has become our life. Our life used to be our family, it still is. Our future used to be this thing that we never really entirely trusted, but it was all we had to go on, which was our pension. But in recent years, Alison, I don't know if you agree with me or disagree, our pension's become our house, therefore our house has become almost everything. Go on.
Well, it was just a point that you were saying that a lot of the repossessions are buy-to-lets. I wondered actually whether that was wholly true, because I know a lot of people who've bought second properties purely because they can't put enough money away for pensions, and so they see houses as a good investment, for the future.
Yeah, that's fine, but it's not their home. It's an investment. It's an investment for their pension. They know the risks. It's just going to keep going up and up and up and up. If you think it's going to keep going up and up and up, go and sit down the end of the garden with the fairies and have a nice little party, because that ain't real life. But it's not their home. There is a big difference. There's a massive difference.
We might have been talking at some length about the John Gaunt situation, and then let that bleed through into Russell Grant and Jonathan Russell. Did I say Grant?
Yes.
I saw him the other day on television. What did he pop up on?
This is the Stars guy, isn't it?
Yes.
You're a Pisces, I can tell.
ITV are doing bingo. Yeah. Oh. At night now. It's an excruciating thing. But Russell Grant popped up in the middle of it, looking like Buddha. Looking so huge and wide that at first I honestly thought it was a spitting image puppet of him. Poor lad. I'm afraid he's never been far from my mind ever since, because it was such a shock to the system. He was telling you which bingo numbers were most likely to come up for you if you were Pisces. But
it's great to make a living out of talking complete swaddle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. How many people believe it?
Want to believe it. Well, when was the last time you read your horoscope, Alison?
I don't read them.
When was the last time you read your horoscope?
Very interesting. Many, many years ago, until yesterday evening, I'm sat in a pub and there's a paper there and I don't look at the papers and I'm flicking through it and I think it might have been the Mail or something.
Yeah.
And you can check this if you've got a copy of yesterday's Mail. Look under Pisces and it said, "You are great at presentation."
Did it?
And I stopped right there, so I thought, not an old swaddle. Of course, clearly not. No,
All I needed to know.
That's the honest truth. But prior to that, never.
Talking about radio controversies then, Radio Bristol presenter Sam Mason has left the BBC. She was told on Saturday that she no longer worked for the company. What's gone out on the newswires about Sam is this. She booked a taxi from the BBC offices. At the time of getting the job, she said, "I'm chuffed to bits to be joining the BBC. Can't wait to start having fun with all the lovely listeners." But the following is a transcript of Sam Mason's conversation with the Bristol Taxi Company, printed in the Sun newspaper. A transcript of the conversation shows how she ordered a taxi to take her 14-year-old daughter from her Clifton house to her grandparents' home. She says, "I know this sounds really racist, but I'm not being... Please don't send anyone like... You know what I mean. An English person would be great."
That's dreadful, isn't it?
"A female would be even better." Operator, "We would class that as being racist. We can't penalise the Asian drivers and just send an English one." Mason, "You've managed it before." Operator, "Right, I don't agree with it personally." Mason, "It's not your 14-year-old girl who's, is it?" Operator, "Yes, but that's racist to say you don't want an Asian driver." Mason, "If it were me, I wouldn't care if it had two heads. But if it's my little girl we're talking about..." Mason is then handed to an operator and tells him that his female colleague has a bad attitude. She adds, "I work at the BBC, and I'm far from racist." She says of her daughter, "I don't want her to turn up with the guy with a turban on. It's going to freak her out. She's not used to Asians."
And how old is the daughter?
14.
She's
not
How
racist.
short-sighted is that?
Wait. She's not racist. Her godparents are black.
It's just cobblers, isn't it?
Could you make that up as,
No.
as what's his face in the Sun, Little John in the Sun is often wont to say? I'm assuming that since this transcript has been reported in the national press, it's not disputed. Who tapes the conversation? I guess the taxi firm.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Or
And
do the
send it
Beeb
to the
record
papers.
outgoing stuff? I don't know. Did she call from the studios, or do they monitor their outgoings? I don't know.
Oh, I think if
don't
you were
know.
a taxi driver...
I don't know whether she called from the BBC. If she called from the BBC, then there's a good reason for curtailing her job. But I guess the fact that she mentioned during the course of this conversation more than once that she worked for the BBC.
Yeah.
Was
Okay.
the taxi
And why would
paid
you
for
do
by
that?
the BBC?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I
okay.
doubt it. I don't know that for sure. But I think what's cost her job is that she mentioned during the course of the conversation that she's BBC, which, I've come across BBC people, not in this kind of circumstance, but BBC people who have used
Yes.
their employer's name as a kind of leverage.
Yeah, me
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, to get themselves decent seats, not at the opera, but, at the tennis and things like that. Talking about those sorts of things, we're nearly out of time for this segment of the show, was going to be the spine of this evening's programme. But Steve and Ali, I want to thank you enormously for a really good fun 2 hours, and a very informative 2 hours as well. Thankfully, we didn't get a chance to talk about how significant the QE2's last voyage is.
Well, it ran
I
aground.
think we should have
this
given
morning.
it 2 minutes silence, actually.
Well, good call. It was put before me as being an important topic this evening, and the journalist who did that, I think, was acting out of due diligence. But we broadcast from the South Coast, and I think there's a little bit of undue deference to
Yeah.
to ocean liners given to journalists who ply their trade down here. It's just another Hulk, isn't it, really?
Yes, but it has history, doesn't it?
Does it? Well, I suppose what you say in the Falklands.
Yeah, all the rest of it, hasn't it?
Took troops down to the Falklands.
The thing is, they say it's going over to, I think it's Dubai, it's going to be converted into a luxury hotel. Well, what is it at the moment?
Yes.
It's not a troop ship, is it? It's not a drive-on, drive-off ferry. It's a luxury hotel. All right, probably a few extra rooms to decorate or something. I'd love to have been on the bridge this morning, though, wouldn't you, at 5:15? Boom. What was that? What was that? That was the bottom of the ship captain. Hitting what? The bottom of the sea.
How did they manage to run aground? What a beauty.
Somebody call the tugs, please.
Fabulous.
I hope we get out of this one.
Fabulous. Will you come back and do it again sometime soon?
If you ask
guys, we'd love to. We'd love to have you, yeah. Ali and Steve, thank you very much indeed. Until the next time. Good night. We're back after these important messages with Fiona. We'll regroup and look forward to your company, thoughts and wisdom through until midnight. It's Play Radio UK.
Love film? Then you'll love PlayRadioUK.com with low prices on Blu-ray DVDs. There's also 40% off and save on DVDs under $5. Just click on the lovefilm.com banner at PlayRadioUK.com. The soundtrack to your festive season. Play Christmas UK.
Ho, ho, ho. Hello, boys and girls. Santa here. Pipe down, Rudolph. Ho, ho, ho. As you can tell, Christmas in the Claus household is well and truly underway. As with any family, it's a busy time for us too, and sometimes things can get a little heated, with Mrs. Claus always wanting to listen to Play Rock, when all I want to listen to is my favourite festive songs on Play Christmas. Nothing but the season's music from the Play Radio Network. Now, where did I put that eggnog? Ho, ho, ho.
Play Christmas UK.
Part of the PlayRadioUK.com network.
Want to see Wonder Bra star Katie Green, Lee Francis, the man behind Avid Marion and Keith Lemon, Sunday League Madness, Jimmy Carr, 2009's Best Games Reviewed, and brand new Jennifer Ellison picks. For the fittest women, the biggest celebs, and the loudest laughs, get loaded. New issue on sale now.
Broadcasting live to the UK. News, information, entertainment, and the best music from the past 40 years. This is Play 2 UK. Tommy Boyd. Call 01243 55 60 60. Email studio@playradiouk.com. Skype play.radio.uk. Now, live from the south coast of England, the Tommy Boyd Show, only on Play 2 UK.
It's Tommy and Fiona with you from 10 until 12 on Play Radio UK, Play 2. February 1974, Fiona. Larry Lujak of WCFL Chicago responds to a fan's letter on air by stating that he'll play more Jim Croce records, quote, when Croce goes back into the studio and makes some more. Croce had died in a plane crash 5 months earlier.
Ooh.
The resulting protests from Croce fans led to an on-air admission by Lujak a few days later that the statement was inappropriate. We were going to be talking at some length this evening about what you can do on air
Yes.
that's wrong. And we will be coming back to this on Monday because I think it's important. You can email studio@playradiouk.com. Our number again is 01243 55 60 60, or you can Skype us. It's play.radio.uk. It's Tommy and Fiona through till 12 o'clock. I'm not going to be talking at great length, although I'm not going to stop anybody expressing whatever they want to say about the John Gaunt situation or the Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand situation. It's
not
absolutely not Russell Grant. Oof. Not going to stop anybody expressing anything they want to say about that. Total freedom of speech here compared to most broadcasting organisations. However, we're also caring people, and this is important to John Gaunt. And because there are a lot of forums attached to this internet radio station and also attached to the wider world of broadcasting, and I know that the TalkSport forums listen to us and talk about what we do, and that will get back to the TalkSport people, I suspect, possibly, and the various other media forums as well. What you don't want to happen is for anything that this station broadcasts or says about John Gaunt to be misinterpreted on those forums.
Yes.
And then to play any inappropriate part in what they decide to do with John.
Absolutely.
Who I personally think is a cracking broadcaster
Mm-hmm.
and who does an extremely difficult job very, very well.
Yeah.
I should know. Okay.
Yes.
Because I almost invented it in this country.
Did you?
I probably almost did, yeah. I probably almost invented the idea of being, of taking an extreme stance and taking the risk of stepping over a line, because it's interesting. We listened to the incident, the piece of audio of John Gaunt, for which, you know, at the moment he's suspended. And the only thing I'll say about it is this: we listened to it in the Play Radio office this afternoon, and the office went absolutely silent as everybody listened.
Right.
And I said to our head of sales, Andy, what do you think? And he said, that was fantastic radio. I said, I know, but what do you think? He said, no, it was fantastic. Can I hear it again? Oh, by the way, Andy's headache this evening, Andy Wise, who's our head of sales at Play, every day he has a headache.
Does he?
And today his headache is, do you pay VAT on condoms? Does anyone know?
I don't know. What is
Are
the
they
rule
luxury goods? Well, you pay condoms on all luxury goods, but you don't pay condoms on necessities.
You don't pay condoms.
You don't pay condoms, did I say? Struggling here with some of the orders of the words and sentences. You don't pay VAT. You don't pay condoms on VAT. Ugh. New ones, hopefully. You don't pay VAT. Do you pay VAT on condoms?
And you pay VAT on all luxury items.
So the thing used to be that I believe you pay VAT on tampons, which are hardly a luxury item.
They're certainly not a luxury item, but
And the
having
other-
said that,
Yes. What?
well, without them,
Yeah. But they're not a luxury, are they?
you'd think it was a luxury if you had them.
So what's exempt from being VAT then, being a necessity?
What's exempt?
Being a necessity. You don't pay VAT on a house.
No.
No.
No, but you said luxury items.
I don't know. I'm not an accountant.
But I guess it would depend whether the condoms were luxury condoms.
Good evening, line 2.
Good evening, Thomas.
Good evening, sir.
And good evening, Fiona.
Good evening.
It's Paul here, the Glasgow Airport cab driver.
I'm sorry if I made some remarks earlier about taxi drivers.
Yes, I heard that. What's he going to say here?
Well, taxi drivers have to condense all their views into about 7 to 15 minutes, because that's how long you have a passenger in the back for, and you need to get your thoughts across quite quickly. So
Very
often your opinions are not rich.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
We're shallow then. Is that what you're saying, really, in a roundabout sort of way?
Yes.
Okay.
Fair
I'll
enough.
accept that.
Fair enough, isn't it? Do you
I'll
have
accept
any
that.
shallow views about anything that's on the news and current affairs?
Yeah, I've got absolutely loads of shallow views. mate.
Fabulous. Let's hear some of your
Yeah.
shallow views.
Right, the John Gaunt thing to start with.
Okay.
It really ties up with the James Whale thing as well, actually, because I just think that station is really... Why do they have presenters like that on the station and then curtail them? They've already lost the best broadcaster the station ever had. They sacked him.
Who's that?
James Whale.
Yes.
Now, probably more listeners than anyone else in that station.
Yes.
And they got rid of it.
Peter Collins has just emailed saying, I agree. First James Well gets the boot, Mike Mendoza, and now John
And
Gaunt
then
is
It's hanging in
suspended.
the balance.
Suspended, yeah.
Yeah, he's hanging in the balance, yeah. So, it's funny you're talking earlier on about things that you used to like and things that you don't like now. Well,
Yeah.
I used to like TalkSport. But the way they've treated their presenters, and here's the thing that always gets me. It always gets me about, I mean, the former station was Talk Radio, and then Talk Sport. Now, the thing that always got me about it is, these stations will tell you, you can call me up, you can talk about anything. But if you phone anyone up on station and try and talk about James Whale, or phone up the radio station and try and talk about John Gaunt, they won't entertain you.
Yes.
You can talk about anything you like, except for James Whale.
I know.
Sorry, except for John Gaunt, and except for Mike Mendoza.
I
You
have
can talk about anything you like.
first-hand
Yeah, right.
experience of this myself, having the distinction of being fired by this organisation, not
Twice.
once, yes, which is John Wales, James Wales' claim to fame, not once, which is Mike Mendoza's claim to fame, and not, well, let's hope that John Gaunt gets the benefit of the doubt. I've been fired by them twice, and on both occasions, you're off the website within 45 seconds.
Really?
And the presenters and the programmes are instructed that your name is never to be mentioned on air, and that if callers ring in and ask what's going on, they are referred to the switchboard, the main switchboard, and the conversation isn't had inside the studio. There's this curious kind of, let's pretend that he never existed.
Yeah, what is
On
that
air.
all about? I don't understand that.
Well, because they don't want to have to discuss their decision. They don't want their decision called into question by the customers.
I really hope someone from TalkSport is listening to this. I really, really do, because
It won't change anything, let me tell you, because the people who run broadcasting and media, big businesses, have a bigger picture, and I'm afraid, or perhaps it's the right thing, they don't take any great notice of conversations that happen on air, either in their organisations or on other organisations.
Fortunately now, though, there's, as you say, there's forums out there, there's the media picked up on it, especially on the James Whale thing, and the media picked up on it, so they got the publicity whether they wanted it or not. But as you say, it's the fact that they take your name off the website,
Yeah.
you disappear, they don't mention who you are, you can talk about anything except for that, and
Yeah.
I just think that's completely nuts.
When the second...
Now, you're absolutely right, Tommy. Can I just say this?
Yeah.
You made the point so well there, because you said that you almost invented it. Because I remember listening to you on Talk Radio, and I thought you were a real whack job.
Thank you.
I thought this guy is who is this guy? And I found out later that you're the guy that used to present Magpie.
Yeah, how's that for...
But unfortunately, I never
Character
watched Magpie,
change.
because I watched the other guys on the other side. Sorry, Tommy.
That's fine. So did I.
And then I thought, who is this nutcase? And this guy, Tommy Boyd, appeared on Talk Radio with his wacky way out there, using things. I thought, who is this guy? And then, of course, you disappeared, and you appeared back in TalkSport, and then you disappeared again. And
Whereabouts are you? Whereabouts are you from, anyway, Paul?
I'm from Glasgow, Tommy.
Which
From
part?
Glasgow. I stay in Renfrew,
Okay.
which is just outside Glasgow.
Yeah. Well, we go back. You go back 2 generations. We're Gorbals.
You're not, are you?
Boyd, man, Boyd, for God's sake.
No, God, see what happened to your
Boyd?
accent, Tommy.
Well, I was born in London,
Right, okay, well, none of us can be
but my
perfect, don't worry
my
about it.
grandfather was Gorbals. The reason I mention it is because I share the same name as a Scottish footballer.
That's true, you do right enough, yeah.
And what one guy did to try and get my name mentioned on TalkSport on the most recent occasion when they fired me was he rang up and he got a football phone in and he said, oh yeah, who was that guy? Played for Chelsea and then went on to captain Scotland. And whoever the host was on TalkSport went, oh, Tommy Boyd. And there was a pause and the caller went, yeah, what happened to him?
Excellent.
Now, I didn't hear it, but somebody told me that lots of people were trying to get on the switchboard and tricking their way.
Can I be really nosy, Tommy?
Yeah?
Can I ask why they fired you?
The reason they fired me, well, on which occasion? I mean, I could do a show and a half on the number of times I've been fired from radio organisations. I've been fired by Talk twice. Do you want the first or the second one? The second one.
Second one.
Second one.
Right.
There was a Saturday evening, the Queen Mother had died, I was the first person to discover this, and I informed the rest of programming that we should be careful. A caller...
Sorry, who had died?
The Queen Mother.
Yes, right, yes.
Had died. Earlier that afternoon. And
right.
I was running a phone-in show about wrestling, which was difficult because I was told to remain respectful whilst I'm talking about Bad Hammer Jack. and the validity of the abdo-crushing throat slam, whilst at the same time maintaining a mental picture of the deceased. So I'm doing a good job, and it was one of the best bits of tightrope walking I've ever done on air. But a guy rang in and he said he'd like to pay his due respects to the Queen Mother. So when he said that, I thought, OK, well, this is safe. No problem here. So I leaned across my desk and picked up a shed load of emails that had been printed off for me to read out later. And you have to vet these things because sometimes they're rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there listening to this bloke, but not actually listening to him, going on about the royal family, how wonderful the Queen Mother was and all that sort of thing. And I switched off and I'm going, I'm reading, you see. And after about 15 seconds, I just vaguely noticed that his tone had changed. And from sort of going, like that, he suddenly was going, yeah, like that. So I realised that something had happened, but I'm buggered if I'd heard it. I hadn't heard it. And more to the point, you only get 6 seconds to dump.
Yeah, to dump it, yes,
Right.
yes, yeah.
Now,
right.
you know, a court of law gets 2 months of deliberation to decide whether something is libelous or gratuitous.
Or indecent, yes.
Or indecent. I
You
get
6 seconds.
Broadcasters get 6 seconds. And in any case, my 6 seconds were up. It had gone. I hadn't heard it. But I could tell that the guy was doing something snarly. So I faded him down and said, that gives you some I guessed that he'd had a go at the royal family. So I said, that gives you some idea of some of the people that we share this country with, who on a night like this are prepared to say something like that. And of course, bear in mind that at that moment in time, I had no idea what had been said. So I blagged on for a little bit and went into a commercial break. Put my hands in my pockets and I wandered into the gallery where the producer and the tech op were sort of staring into middle distance. And I said, did anybody catch what that chap actually said? And they went, yes. He said that he hated the royal family so much that he would like to shoot the whole fucking lot of them.
Oh, God.
So I said,
yes.
Ah. Right. So I drove home thinking, that's an issue. Right?
Yes.
But then, hold on. A week goes by. Nothing. It's halfway during the following week, right, that one solitary letter of complaint is received by the radio authority, now called Ofcom.
Yes, right.
And they're duty-bound to follow these things up. So they request a tape of the incident from the radio station, but the complainer never says exactly what day or time it was. So they had to ring me up and ask me. And I did remember it.
Yes.
And I could have played clever and gone, oh, do you know, I've got no idea. But they would have had to have found that moment because all radio stations are required by law to keep a tape of everything that's broadcast for a given period. I can't remember how long that is, something like 3 weeks. It might be 3 months.
Right, okay.
That's they're required by law. They can get fined a shed load of money, 50 grand, something like that, if they can't produce a tape of anything that was broadcast.
Ridiculous.
Anyway, they found the tape. They listened to it, my radio station, that's Kelvin Mackenzie, basically.
Yes, uh-huh.
And because Kelvin and I never saw eye to eye about a bunch of things anyway, as far as he was concerned, that was it.
That was good enough for him.
So the program controller rang me up and said, we got to let you go. Then I got a phone call, very kind phone call from the radio authority, Ofcom, and it was a high up there, and I don't know how he got my home number. And he said to me that afternoon, he said, I am so sorry. He said, this is nothing to do with us. We would just have said, complaint upheld. No fine, no kick-ass, no nothing. It was unfortunate because he said, this guy at the radio authority, all that happened was a caller using deceit fooled your phone operator and your producer, and when he got on air, fooled you, lulled you...
Caught everyone out.
In other words, what happened was a listener went to great lengths to actually do nothing more or less than get people at the radio station into trouble. Because I remember his last words were, how's that... the thing I did hear him say was, how's that on live radio? I don't know who that guy is, and I wouldn't thump him if I met him, because I wouldn't hit anybody, because that's an act of violence. But I don't hold any great recrimination, because, you know, it's all in the past. And in any case, I practically have made a lifetime's work of leaving radio stations under a cloud. It's my
point here for the whole thing, though, Tommy, is if you're going to have cutting-edge things like yourself, like John Gaunt, like James Whale, like Mike Mendoza...
Yeah.
It's a risk you have to take.
I know.
And I don't know what's happened to TalkSport, because it used to be quite cutting edge, but judging by the last couple of years, okay, Mike Dicken unfortunately died, poor guy. But I mean that's 4 damn good presenters from that station now. And the other thing I was going to say to you, that's what it was I was listening to the night James Whale was talking about the London mayoral elections, and him and Ash were having a bit of a carry-on, and James Whale sort of said something along the lines of, vote for Boris Johnson, and Ash kind of whispered, no, vote for Ken Livingstone, Boris Johnson, Ken Livingstone, Boris Johnson, Ken Livingstone, and they had a banter for about 20 seconds, and that was it. And I believe, from what I understood, that's the reason he got sacked.
Yeah. There is, and I haven't heard it, and I haven't even seen a transcript of it, although they are about. My own view on these things is that often, if as an employer, you have your own agenda about an employee, okay, it might fall to you to be able to use one transgression or alleged transgression by that employee
to get rid of them.
To leverage an action for which that that employer had not transgressed. So actually, everybody who broadcasts anywhere near the edge has to keep absolutely squeaky clean with absolutely every aspect of their work, where they park, how they say hello when they cross the boss on the stairs, how they think about negotiating their new contract, all that kind of stuff has to be utterly, utterly, utterly squeaky clean. And even if it is, right, even if they've given their bosses no reason whatsoever to regard them as anything other than hallowed employees, you can often get, particularly in the media, what's called a change of direction.
It's quite fickle then, really.
A new vision. Okay? And it might be that you're not part of that change of direction. New vision.
You have to move in new directions.
But, okay, they still need something else in order to apply that leverage in order for their change of direction to go through swiftly and smoothly. Now, I'm only referencing that in general terms, and of the many times that I've been sacked, 2 or 3 occasions, and I'm not referencing that with James Whale or John Gaunt or Russell Brand, who resigned, of course. Or the people who were sacked, or Mike Mendoza, the people who were sacked at Radio 2. I'm not referencing them with that at all, but it does go on, and quite a lot of people have lost their jobs in various smaller radio stations right across the country over the last 2, 3, 4 months because of this change of direction.
It sounds really fickle.
No more fickle.
It's funny,
no more fickle than most. No more fickle than most businesses, really.
When Talk Radio came on the air, I remember sort of hearing things about this Talk Radio station, and when Talk Radio came on the air, that was it. I gave up music radio. Totally. And all I listened to all day long and all night long when I was driving, Talk Radio.
Somebody's just emailed in the bit of me what I got sacked for, which I've never heard.
Have you got it? Have someone sent it in to you?
I've never heard it. Somebody's just emailed it me.
It's on your. It's there if you want to.
Well, shall we get the weather?
Yeah.
You going to hang around, Paul, or shall we call you back or something? Or do you want to go and listen to it somewhere else?
I can listen if you like. I can listen on the phone here.
All right, you hang around then. You hang around. Let's get the weather.
Play 2 UK weather.
Further showers this evening across Scotland and western parts of Britain. These will ease overnight, with most parts becoming dry by dawn. Chilly inland with a local ground frost. Looking on to tomorrow, apart from a few showers across parts of Scotland, most areas will have a dry day with long spells of sunshine, feeling pleasant as winds become light.
You're up to date on Play 2 UK. Get Play Radio at your fingertips by downloading our exclusive toolbar. Get the latest updates from Play Radio UK. Check out the webcams or find out your local weather. It's even got its very own search engine. Download the toolbar now by clicking on the banner at playradiouk.com.
Websites don't always work to their full potential. In fact, they can seem like a mystic art. Wouldn't it be great if you had someone on hand to wave a magic wand that would optimize, improve, and increase traffic to your website? Fear no more. The Web Wizard is here dispensing web wisdom and free tips. Email your question to Jason Rutland, the Play 2 Web Wizard, wizard@playradiouk.com. Then listen at 2:30 p.m. on the last Thursday of every month. The Web Wizard on Play 2 with Argo Internet Business Consultants. Growing your ideas. Click argo.uk.com.
In a world obsessed with celebrities, one woman wanted only one thing: to wake up in the morning to a genuine poster of David Hasselhoff on her wall. To have that poster contain a personal message to her in his very own handwriting. She was faced with fake after fake. Where could she turn for help? The answer was simple. Universal Posters. They have a range of approved celebrity pictures, which even come complete with a personalized message in the celebrity's very own handwriting. This could all be yours for just £7.99. So go to playradiouk.com and click on the Universal Poster banner. Play Radio UK and Universal Posters. Now showing on a PC near you.
The Tommy Boyd Show, only on Play 2 UK.
Got Paul on the line, isn't it, from Glasgow?
Yes, that's right, Tommy. Yes, that's me.
Okay, the recording quality is not top of the tree, but this is what got me fired the second time from this organisation.
Right, 704-2020-20 is the number. John is our next caller. He calls from somewhere near Bristol. Hello, John.
Hi there. It's John Fleming here.
Hi.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Not so bad. I just like to talk about the royalty. I don't want to, I have great respect for them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't mind me speaking, can I speak on mine here? I'm on national radio, am I?
Oh, why not, yeah.
Okay, the Queen Elizabeth and the Queen Mother and Prince Charles and the family and all of them, I mean, they're fantastic.
Okay, I'm just going to pause it there for a second, because I've drifted off here. Because this guy, I assume, because this is what he said, he's a royalist.
Mm.
And generally speaking, they're very boring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the royal family, but royalists, when they come on the radio, they just want to say how wonderful Queen is.
He did sound a bit.
He sounded a bit
what a wonderful job she does.
What a wonderful job she does. He sounded maudling, and so I'm off now. So I'm picking up this big pile of emails, and I'm reading things like, because the emails that you used to get at Talk Sport were so vile, some of them. I mean, really, I couldn't read out, even with the freedom we have here, I couldn't tell you some of the things that people used to email in using fake Hotmail accounts and things. It was disgusting. It was truly I mean, I almost needed, if I was a weaker person, I would have needed counselling to deal with.
Though?
Oh,
is it really that bad?
Aimed at you.
Serious personal stuff. I'm not even going to give you I'm not even going to contaminate anybody's mind listening with some of the shit that I used to have to read as part of my job of what people would hope would happen to me in my life.
Right.
Really?
People need someone to hate. And part of my job was being that kind of an Aunt Sally. So anyway, I'm checking these emails because it's very easy to start an email and it sort of says, Dear Tommy, I'm listening to and enjoying the show. However, I hope that you... can't read that one. So you don't want to have a succession of emails that you have to curtail halfway through because they turn out to be hate mail. So you go through, that one's not too bad. Yeah. You've got to read them. And you can't read and totally listen at the same time.
No.
Anyway... So the bloke is droning on about the Queen and the royal family.
He sounds as though he's had a few, actually.
You agree with me? Yeah?
Well, on a night like this, it would be wrong to get into a discussion about them.
Yeah.
I think the value of the royal family. I'm sad that a lady who obviously meant a great deal to her family and lived a remarkable life.
Right.
I'm talking now, and I'm not actually even listening to me. I'm reading emails. And I'm just sort of going along with what I'm assuming he's saying.
Happy there.
Died, if you want to, yeah?
Just a second. I'm actually a real Republican. If I have my real honest, this is my honest view. I think we should shoot the fucking lot of them. How's you that for your national radio?
Here we go.
And you too, pal. Thank you. Good night.
Shit, the whole fucking lot of them. And the presenter who's reading emails is going, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, thank you, good night.
Yeah, thank you, good night, yeah.
Actually, Tommy, I think he sounded as though he's had a few.
He'd had a few, yeah, I wish I had. If I'd had a few, if I'd had a few, I probably might have been a bit more alert.
At that point, I would probably be nailing my testicles to a railway sleeper with rusty nails.
Well, as I said, I came off it and I had no idea what he'd said. Let's just go back and listen to it, because, oh dear, I'm just nodding along, yeah.
Died, if you want to, yeah?
Just a second. I'm actually a real Republican. If I have my real honest, this is my honest view. I think we should shoot the fucking lot of them.
This is the first time I've heard this.
It's
I like it. Hold on, let's just see what happens next.
For your national radio. Fuck you, pal.
And you too, pal. Thank you.
Yeah, that was it. I come back when I heard "fuck you too, pal." And I thought, oh Christ, this has gone out.
Is that what he said? I missed that bit. Is that what he said?
Yeah, he just, I remember now. When I came out, I came out as his tone changed, and I think I picked up around about the you, pal.
I'm actually a real Republican. If I have my real honest, this is my honest view. I think we should shoot the fucking lot of them. How's you that for your national radio? Fuck you, pal.
And you too, pal. Thank you. Good night.
And what's happening is, all I could hear was something you, pal, and so I thought, whatever. Well, you too, pal. And now I'm sort of going. I'm going to myself. Well, whatever it is, it's gone out. You've missed the dump. So what can I say about something I haven't heard, or at least wasn't really paying attention to? Right. So here's how I sort of try to explain it away.
I don't mind something like that going up because all of human life is here, and I just sometimes feel sad that we have democracy in this country. It means that even people like that have got a vote.
Yeah, well, you can see how I screwed myself there, basically, because I'm pretending I heard it, and that I felt it was acceptable. Well, obviously, it's appalling. There we go.
It's one of these things, Tommy. You'll never be able to go back and correct it, though. And if you'd asked the guys in the control room, what did the guy actually say, and they told you, then you maybe made an on-air apology, and on behalf of the guy, you might have got away with it. Then again,
I don't know. Because that you know the people around the radio station had other reasons. We were having our other arguments about other things, far too boring to go into detail about. But you know, I'm somebody who doesn't mind saying, "I'm sorry, I disagree with you," or "No, I'm not going to do that."
You know something? I knew that about you. So I bet he stands in that office here and argues with them.
No, not in a bad way, but I don't know. I just have a thing about authority if I think if it's behaving badly. And like everybody, I think I'm a good judge of when that is. Whether I am or am not, in all honesty, I don't know. But at the moment of having to make a decision whether or not to question authority, I tend to question authority. So
are you going to be here next week then?
Well, I'll be here next week, as far as I know, yes. But I was the same at school. I mean, when I was at school, we used to have to wear a stupid tie and a stupid blazer and a stupid shirt and a stupid cap. Okay? And so I campaigned, and I got the whole of the school to agree that this was wrong. So the headmaster, after a big campaign, eventually relented and said that we would be allowed to wear polo neck shirts instead of a collar and tie. So I thought, well, polo necks are a bit naff, but it means that we've won. And I assumed that the whole school would take advantage of this opportunity to express their power and their individuality by choosing to either wear a collar and tie or a polo neck. This is an absolutely true story. I pitched up on the Monday for school assembly. Okay? I was sixth form, and the fifth form, the fourth form, the third form, second form, everyone was there, the whole school, in the well of the hall, and I was up on the stage because I was a prefect, right, and not the headmaster's favourite prefect, I can tell you.
What a surprise.
And I looked down across all 800 pupils, and I was the only twat in a polo neck. Every single one of them who had said that they were going to stand up for their rights and all this shit. Every single one of them was looking at me and going, he's a plonker. Look at him, he looks like Val Doonican up there. So that's where I go wrong. Where do you go wrong, Paul?
I go wrong with my last job there.
Where?
I took a guy from the airport to his home, and the job came to £45.
Right.
And he gave me 3 notes.
Yep.
And I gave him £15 back.
Sorry,
and
the
I drove
job...
down to the end of the road and took the notes out of my pocket and found he was only giving me 50.
Did he do it on purpose? Or was
no, he handed me the notes.
But did he know he was giving you 50, and did he know he was getting 15 back?
I have no idea. I don't know.
No.
I don't know. Just when I drove down the bottom of the road, I put my hand in my pocket, I thought, I'll stick that in my top pocket, and I'll stick it in my wallet later on, and when I opened the notes up, there was 50.
Yeah.
Buggers.
Yeah, I got too much change back the other day, and discussed it with the other half, and I said, you know, that can't be right. And she said, well, maybe it's a special price for you or something. I said, what are you talking about? That's ludicrous. She said, well, I said, you want to walk with it? She said, well, they're a big organisation.
Were you in pocket or out of pocket?
I was in pocket.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, good karma for you. No doubt you'll get a massive tip on your next job, Paul. It's been a delight talking to you. Thank you for your time and your wisdom.
You're very welcome, Tommy, and I'll speak to you again soon, mate.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah, right.
No, I am. Good lad.
Right. Cheers, Tommy.
Cheers, mate. Cheers. Okay. Well, we're sort of drifting to where we're going on Monday night. On Monday night, we're going to be talking about the state of broadcasting. Whether the long shadow of the sort of post-Mary Whitehouse brigade is beginning to fall right across broadcasting, radio in particular, and whether we're all starting to feel a chill from that, and we're all having to mind our P's and Q's. We have our own code at Play Radio. We recognise that we've got some freedoms that other broadcasters don't have, but we use them intelligently, so we don't swear, for example, gratuitously, although